The story begins with a battle between Demon King Galt Luzin and heroine Angelica and her teammate Selene. When they attack Galt, their attacks seem to have no effect. Galt commented that such attacks were meaningless to him. Angelica was surprised to see that Selena's magical attack had slightly scratched him. Galt admits that in theory it has some effect, but if he is discovered, he will no longer be as powerful as before. He reminded himself that he was the Demon King of the Masugunia continent. Galt then targets Selena, forcing her to retreat. He mused that there might be greater threats on other continents, and that even if humans could defeat him, it would not be the ending they expected. However, he is certain that the heroine and her group are his enemies as Angelica prepares to attack again. He mocked her, called her still just a child, and offered her the opportunity to retreat and run away. She responded resolutely, declaring that she was a hero and would not run away from the Demon King. Galt thought about his personal reasons for not wanting to fight Angelica. She bears an uncanny resemblance to his deceased wife, Sasaya, who passed away 300 years ago. Taking advantage of Galt's absence while he was inspecting the city, one of the four monarchs initiated a rebellion. Although society has strongly resisted, when Galt returned he found her dead. He sobbed at that moment. Since then, he still lives in loneliness. Although many people suggested that he remarry, he could not love anyone other than his wife, so he refused all of those offers. He never expected that the heroine sent to kill him would be exactly like his late wife, and he really didn't want to fight her. She resolutely refused to give up, because doing so would mean all her efforts would be in vain. Recently, there has been a popular sentiment in his country that they should treat women and children kindly, and it seems to be gaining support. Galt admits that her efforts will not be wasted, but on the contrary, he is giving her the opportunity to choose the right path, because she is young and should enjoy life. In response, she rushed to attack him, asking why he spoke as if he were her teacher, and she declared that he should prepare to die. He easily countered her attack, thought she was too weak after losing consciousness. He thought she might be okay, but if he left her there, the wolves would definitely eat her. Galt later carried both Selene and Angelica to a nearby human village. He informed Selene's father that she had ventured into monster territory and had been defeated. Although she had suffered a few injuries, they were not serious. Selene's father expressed gratitude to Galt for taking care of her, and mentioned recent rumors that monsters had become less violent, which appeared to be true. Galt felt the man's appreciation. Even though Selene has been kidnapped by monsters, she will not be harmed. It seems that the conflict between humans and monsters is entering a new phase. As he left the village, Galt hoped that neither humans nor monsters would completely perish. After all, no one wants to witness the death of loved ones, and bringing everyone back home is a painful task for Demon King Galt. Angelica was the last person Galt wanted to face. The sight of her unconscious reminded him too much of his wife. He knew that Sasaya was different, after all, she had horns. Galt realized that it was useless to think too much about such comparisons. Afterwards, Galt teleported to the village where Angelica was born, a place known as the cradle of many famous heroes. He remembered that Angelica's father had passed away a long time ago, leaving her mother to raise her alone. He thought that maybe Angelica shouldn't have become an adventurer and should have spent more time with her mother. However, he quickly blamed himself for those thoughts, realizing that he shouldn't have thought like that. He approached Angelica's mother. Galt introduces himself and explains that Angelica was defeated in monster territory and he is bringing her back. When the woman turned to face him, the joy of seeing Angelica was clearly evident on her face. Galt was shocked to see her, because she looks very similar to Sasaya. That woman is Ritia, and she thanked Galt profusely for bringing Angelica home. Galt couldn't help but notice that Ritia resembled Sasaya more than Angelica. Ritia then asked him what was wrong and he apologized, then asked her if she was the sister of the heroine Angelica. Ritia replies that Galt is very kind and that she is in fact Angelica's mother. Galt thought to herself that she couldn't reveal her true identity, but since she gave birth to Angelica when she was less than 20 years old, this made sense. Ritia then asked if he was the Demon King. Said she could recognize him by his forehead and beard. Galt wished she wouldn't look at him with such curious eyes. He reluctantly introduces himself as Galt, and thinks that his reputation as the Demon King is now completely ruined. Ritia admitted this and invited him inside for tea, offering to prepare a pot of herbal tea for him. Galt felt surprised. He hadn't experienced such kindness since his wife died, and Ritia, who looked exactly like Sasaya, treated him with warmth. He agreed to stay for tea and then asked her name. She smiled and said she was Raitia. They carefully laid Angelica down on the bed. While Raitia prepared the tea, she brought it to Galt. She asked if he was worried that the tea might be poisoned. Galt denied that concern, stating that a demon king cannot be killed by poison. As the two enjoy tea, Raitia mentions that there are still many people who say bad things about monsters, but she believes that the demon king has a very difficult job, especially with the recent policy changes. Galt asked her if she was upset that he had defeated Angelica. Raitia reminds that no matter what, the hero and the demon king were originally rivals. However, Galt brought Angelica back with grace, especially compared to some human males who were untrustworthy. Raitia feels that Galt is much more trustworthy. He thought that like Sasaya, Raitia was also kind to all races, but Galt realized he couldn't compare the two, because everyone has their own charm. At that moment, he realized that he was starting to fall in love with Raitia. Raitia explains that she hoped Angelica would receive blessings from the angels, so she named her with that wish in mind. However, her husband passed away from illness, and since then Angelica wanted to become stronger so she could become an adventurer. Galt understood why Angelica was so determined. She doesn't want to be a burden anymore. He could sympathize with that decision because his father, the previous demon king, also devoted himself to his work. Galt's father, the previous demon king, left all of his upbringing to his mother. His mother not only had to take care of him, but also had to manage all court affairs. Galt hoped that in the future she could enjoy the rest of her life without having to bear the burdens he had placed on her. Raitia comments that Galt may be right, as Angelica is a good child. Galt couldn't help but notice the adorable moles on her mouth. At that moment, Raitia called him loudly, startling him. Galt quickly apologized, but she asked why he was apologizing. He replied that it was nothing and encouraged her to continue saying what she was about to say before. In his heart, he thought that perhaps she had noticed where his eyes looked. Raitia then asked permission to ask something, and when Galt agreed, she asked if Angelica has the potential to become a hero. This direct question surprised Galt because he did not expect her to ask like that. Raitia went on to say that if Angelica could at least reach the level of the Demon King. Raitia commented that Angelica must have done well, but Galt, who suffered absolutely no damage from Angelica's attacks at that time, it was still okay. She added that as Angelica's mother, she would certainly be worried about her daughter's condition. Hearing that, Galt decided to give his honest opinion. He said that it was true that Angelica had excellent qualities and a special personality, but her movements were too predictable. He felt that Angelica relied too much on instinct in combat. Galt realized he needed to provide her with an example like he usually did during employee promotion meetings. He went on to explain that relying on instinct alone can get a person to a certain point, but they will eventually reach a limit. People with good basic training can overcome that barrier. He emphasized that among the most famous explorers in history, most trained much more harshly than ordinary adventurers. Raitia agreed, noting that because they lived in the countryside, Angelica had never received proper training in the field. Galt commented that Angelica was lucky to fall into his hands, but it was hard to predict what would happen to her next time, so she needed to train hard. He found it hard to believe that he had talked so much with Raitia. He went on to explain that, according to reports from his subordinates, Angelica avoided many battles in favor of attacking him directly, looking for the easiest way to defeat the Demon King and quickly becoming a famous figure. Turn on. She aspires to achieve fame in a short time. Galt, he slammed his hand on the table and said that if she continued on this path, she would be at a great disadvantage. Galt implores Raitia to ensure that Angelica learns basic skills and receives a proper education. He ponders how Angelica is a hero and could one day return to fight him. When that moment comes, if she has improved, he cannot guarantee her safety. Raitia laughed and commented that Galt sounded like a teacher. Galt immediately apologized for saying that. Raitia replied that, other than caring for her daughter, Galt was the only person other than Raitia's husband who showed such concern. Galt pondered this and said that it was because he was destined to fight Angelica. If he was injured, that was a problem he would have to face himself. He remembered his wife, who once gently stroked his head and said that he didn't have to continue living just for her anymore, but could start a new life. Galt reflects on living to protect those important to you, not just yourself. Finally, he remembered his wife's last words before she died. At that moment, Rachel placed her hand on Galt and asked him what was wrong. He thought that he never expected to have such feelings again. Galt said that if Ritia was sad, he would also feel heartbroken. He hoped that he wouldn't have to fight Angelica again, and so he asked Ritia if she would agree to be his wife. Ritia did not immediately react to the proposal. Galt went on to explain that if they married, Angelica would become his daughter, and there would no longer be any reason for conflict. The war between humans and demons will end, allowing them to live in peace. Galt realized that the reason he gave was just an excuse. He confessed that he fell in love with Radia at first sight and wanted to make her happy for the rest of her life. No need to make excuses anymore. With a gentle smile, Ratia agreed to his proposal. So emotional. Galt thanked her, thinking that her smile reminded him of Sasaya. However, Ratia is the only and most special person to him. Then he shook her hand and said, "Please be nice to me." Ratia also replied, "Please do the same for me." When Galt returned to his secretary Toluarina, she was surprised and asked him to repeat what he had just said. He explained that there would be some changes in management. First of all, he wanted the royal guards, who always guarded him while he slept, to be transferred to another mission. Toluarina asked the reason behind this request. Galt replied that he was remarrying and would live elsewhere. Toluarina was stunned when she heard this. Toluarina commented that remarrying would allow him to have a successor. She supported that decision but felt it was important that he live in his new partner's home. Galt agreed, adding that it would be inappropriate for a human to live in the Demon King's castle. Toluarina was even more surprised by this statement. Galt went on to explain that if word of the heroine's alleged change of side spread, it could cause others to waver and seek new alliances. Toluarina asked if he was drunk. Galt affirmed that he was completely sober. She then asked if he had a crush on the heroine who had come to the castle that day, but noted that she was only 15 or 16 years old, which would tarnish his reputation. Galt begged her not to look at him that way, insisting that it wasn't what she thought. Toluarina replied that from now on she would no longer treat him as an ordinary person. Galt thought she finally understood the problem. He clarified that the person he wanted to marry was the heroine's mother. Toluarina's facial expression changed instantly, and he commented on that. She then asked him if he was sure he wasn't affected by some confusion magic. Galt replied that he was completely awake, and emphasized that the woman had accepted his marriage proposal. Toluarina continued asking if he was really listening to her. Galt declared that he would leave the remaining matters to her with all humility. She commented that she had never heard of a human and a devil getting married. Galt responded that love could overcome all barriers and that he would fulfill his duty as Demon King, establishing the necessary rules. Toluarina told Galt to wait because she hadn't finished speaking yet, but at that moment he teleported to Ratia's house. When he arrived, he saw her preparing food. Ratia welcomed him with a gentle smile, while Galt felt a little embarrassed calling her by name after only meeting her a few hours before. Ratia reminded him that she would prepare another meal for him. Galt glanced at her apron and couldn't help but think that her figure was like that of a goddess, but he also wondered if living together right away was a good idea. Ratia called Galt, asking if there was any food he couldn't eat. He replied that he stayed away from holy water and the like. Ratia nodded, remembering that, and said she didn't know when Angelica would wake up, so she wanted to get everything ready for dinner and hoped he would like it. Galt agreed and asked her to call him Galt instead of Demon King. In his heart, he thought he would prefer to be called Darling, but right now it was too early. Ratia understood and agreed to call him Galt. Complimented that it was a cool name. Galt remembered how many years it had been since anyone had called him by his first name, and hearing it from her lips made him feel wonderful. He offered to help her with something. Ratia suggested that he could prepare carrots and onions. He happily accepted, saying to leave it to him. While he was peeling, Ratia suddenly praised him, saying that he was very skillful. He replied that a demon's eyes are not easily stung by things like onions. Ratia smiled, saying she would prepare one more dish. At that time, Galt reminisced about the time after his wife, Sasaya, passed away. At that time, every moment of his life was devoted to the responsibility of a demon king, to the point of forgetting the peace and warmth of a home. This memory raised indescribable emotions in his heart. Noticing that, Ratia asked if the onions were making his eyes sting. Galt laughed, wiped his tears, and replied that he was just emotional. When the meal was complete, they both sat down and began to eat. After tasting it, Galt praised the dish for its gentle flavor and asked if she used salt. Raitia replied that the food was so delicious thanks to his help. Galt looked at her and thought he would never let her smile fade. Galt then commented that she seemed very strong, which made sense since she was the mother of a heroine. But Raitia quickly added that he was neither an adventurer nor a fighter. Galt nodded slightly, realizing that maintaining a bright smile like Reach's was much more difficult than being strong on the battlefield. She replied that Angelica often told her the same thing, but in her case it was more of a criticism than a compliment. She often said that she was too easygoing, but that was her personality and it was really a flaw and not something to be praised. Galt thought to herself, there was truly nothing that made her different from a goddess. Raitia continued, saying that Galt was strong both physically and mentally, but his work was definitely tiring. He agrees, explaining that being the Demon King, having to deal with mounting political problems, and being attacked by heroes at the worst times is not exactly an easy thing to do. She apologized and said that next time she would text her daughter, telling Angelica to inform Galt in advance if she wanted to come see him. Since he will be her father, there may be problems arising from this relationship. Galt replied that he still couldn't help but wonder what Angelica would say about this. He thought explaining the whole story to the hero would be a difficult task for him to undertake. He considered going back to the castle to decide everything, then returning here the next day. At that moment, Angelica woke up and entered the room. Angelica speaks up saying that she managed to reach the Demon King, although she quickly lost the battle. However, next time she will definitely force him to submit. When he saw Galt sitting there, she was stunned but still greeted him politely. Raitia stood up and asked Angelica if she wanted to eat dinner right away or if she wanted to reheat the food. Angelica turned away, not looking at Galt, and asked for a glass of water first, hoping to wake herself up because she still felt sleepy. Galt noticed that Angelica hadn't really realized that he was actually sitting in front of her, but he decided not to pay much attention to it. He told her to listen carefully because he was about to reveal the whole truth. He felt like he looked a little funny as he spoke while holding the spoon in his hand. Angelica asked incredulously if he had destroyed the entire kingdom while she was unconscious and even invaded her home. Galt then said that he and Raitia were married. There was no immediate reaction. Angelica pinched herself and screamed, trying to wake up, not wanting to face this strange nightmare. Raitia advised Angelica to calm down, saying that this was the truth and asking her to listen before reacting. Raitia explains that she has decided to remarry. Angelica shook her mother's shoulder, wondering if she was being manipulated or coerced in any way, and asked Raitia to tell the truth. Raitia replied that she was not manipulated or coerced, emphasizing that Galt was straightforward and truly a gentleman. However, Angelica cannot accept this. She argues that he is the Demon King, which means he is full of crime and drinks the blood of innocent people every day. Galt calmly replied that he was not a vampire. Angelica shouted angrily, asking him to shut up. Galt and Raitia looked at each other, wondering if this was just a rebellious phase for Angelica. Angelica firmly insisted that her anger was not due to rebellion. Raitia hugged her. Raitia gently reassured her and assured her that no one was lying to her. She is actually married to Galt. Even so, Angelica still didn't believe it. Raitia affirms that if there is one thing she is most confident in, it is her ability to perceive people correctly. Galt admitted that it was strange, but he had loved Raitia at first sight and there was nothing false about those feelings. That's why he bet everything to propose to her. Angelica paused a bit, saying that it was her mother's choice who she married. Angelica then turned and ran away, declaring that she would not accept him as her father. She ran into the room, asked everyone to leave her alone, and even put a piece of paper on the door, stating that the Demon King was not allowed to enter. Raitia smiled, commenting that this reaction was understandable, and that everyone at Angelica's place would certainly be surprised. Galt was curious and asked her to tell more about this story. Raitia explains that people have every reason to think this is a cruel joke, but she will keep an optimistic attitude. She then suggested that they both continue cooking. During dinner, Raitia commented that Angelica did not seem to object to her remarrying, but she's not ready to let Galt become her father. Galt felt that everything happened too suddenly, and commented that he likes to take things slowly. Raitia suggested they ignore their worries and enjoy dinner, believing that if they weren't hungry, they would be able to think more positively. He thanked her for this advice and began to think about slowly removing the barriers. He realizes that he must live for one reason only, to be accepted by Angelica, and he decides to make them his family. Raitia then asked him if this was his first or second time getting married. Galt pondered whether he should hide these things from her, because he felt it was a bit of a dark conversation. He confirmed that his wife, Sasaya, had passed away, and from then on he lived alone. Raitia felt sorry for him, saying that she couldn't imagine the pain of constantly arguing with others, and that Galt seemed to have shouldered too much on his own. He agreed, saying that although it might be inappropriate to express, Galt felt as if Sasaya was pushing him from behind every time he met Raitia. Raitia agreed, saying that she also wanted the person she loved to not have to live their whole life in sadness. Furthermore, she thought about her late husband, realizing that it would be strange if she did not acknowledge him, and she believed that Galt would not want a woman to completely forget her past. Galt guessed that and asked why she hadn't remarried until now. Raitia replied that it was simple. When her husband died, Angelica was too young, and she had to raise her daughter on her own. Even though they seemed similar, Galt pondered, they were actually very different. In any case, he and Sasaya had no children. Raitia continues, saying that since then, she has no more room for love in her heart. Galt felt embarrassed by her reaction, unable to get over her beauty. Raitia continues, saying that she now believes she can love again, even while raising Angelica. Galt realizes that if he marries her, he will have to make both Raitia and Angelica happy. He assures Raitia that he will do his best to help her and take care of Angelica. They looked at the clock and noticed it was almost 11:20. Raitia then commented that it was late and asked him to sleep with her in her room. Galt was surprised by her request. He felt a bit embarrassed and told himself to calm down. Since they were now a couple, this shouldn't be strange. Although her seductive gestures moved him, he worried he would lose control. He told himself that as a couple living under the same roof, sleeping separately would make them feel like strangers. He held her hand and asked if she could let him sleep in the living room. She wondered if that was necessary. Galt thought it best if he slept in the living room, because right now he prioritized being with Angelica. The next morning, Angelica woke up and smelled a pleasant fragrance spreading in the air, making her feel hungry. She skipped dinner last night because of Galt. She kept thinking about Galt appearing in her dream. When she greeted her mother, she saw Raitia with Galt. He greeted Angelica and asked her if she slept well. Angelica hid behind the door, staring at Galt. Raitia then asked if Angelica had a headache. Galt chimed in, saying he was happy to see Angelica awake, and that breakfast was the foundation for good health, advising her to eat well. Angelica shouted, asking why a demon king would care about the health of a heroine like her. Raitia replied that Galt had woken up early just to make breakfast for Angelica. Angelica protested that she did not ask him to do so. Galt suggests they bake together using his fire magic. Angelica asks him to stop calling her names and stop pretending to be her father. Galt asked her what he should call her. She replied that he should call her heroine. Galt points out that even parents who raise children do not call their children by their profession. Angelica yells that having a demon king as a father is strange enough. He replied that if she refused to listen to what he had to say, he would continue to call her Angelica. She told him to do whatever he wanted. Galt then asked her how long she wanted the bread to bake. She replied, asking him not to let it burn. He acknowledged her request, saying he understood. She added that he shouldn't call her name without a reason. While they were eating, Raitia commented that Angelica seemed to like Galt's food, which showed that they were getting along well. Angelica quickly objected and asked not to say such things. Galt guessed that his strategy of reaching Angelica through her stomach had been somewhat successful. Afterwards, Galt asked her how she felt about breakfast. Angelica replied that it was fine, but insisted that he not talk to her. Galt felt like the situation seemed less tense than yesterday. When Angelica asked if she could help wash the dishes, Galt was happy to hear that and smiled. Angelica curiously asked why he smiled like that. He replied that it was nothing. He told himself that he and Sasaya had no children, which made him feel awkward about having a family. And now he has a daughter. Galt recalls that his father was indifferent to the family, and when Galt was a child, he often had to console himself for a long time about everything he had to ask his father. Angelica then checked the amount of equipment and got ready. Galt asked if she was going on another adventure, reminding her of having to get home before sunset. He then asked her where she was going that day. She was embarrassed and told him not to think he was her biological father just because he asked her where she was going. Galt said that he was her real father, and his wife agreed as they both smiled. Angelica asked why they were so happy. She explains that since she went straight to Galt's territory, there are still some areas that need to be conquered. Therefore, she planned to go to the Tower of the Immortals in the Groaning Cave. Galt informed her that there was no need to do so now. Angelica was surprised to hear that and asked why. He explains that after remarrying Raitia, the demands from the humans changed, and they signed an alliance. Therefore, there was no longer any reason to continue fighting, which was why he ordered everyone to retreat. Then Angelica asked, "What else does it mean to be a hero?" Galt replies that since he only rules over ghosts, Angelica can still fight normal, weak monsters. Angelica was surprised and thought that a hero who had to reduce himself to fight weak monsters was a waste of his potential. Galt countered that, if so, a hero could be called an adventurer, and just a trap with no business behind it. He felt like he didn't recognize the royal remarriage and thought he should support Angelica like a father, encouraging her. He continues that the role of a hero is to bring peace to everyone, which is already a good ideal. He then suggested that she join the kingdom's knights as they still fought in the same way as she did. Angelica thought for a moment about joining the Knight Order. Galt agreed to the idea, believing it would help her live a comfortable life and make her mother worry less, seemingly a good choice for everyone. However, Angelica screams at Galt, claiming that he understands nothing about her or what it means to be a hero, and that you will never understand. Galt was surprised and wondered where he went wrong. Raitia advises Angelica to apologize, explaining that Galt said nothing wrong, but Galt replied that he was not angry about the situation. Raitia commented that Angelica's words were too harsh, and the peaceful, warm atmosphere was gone. Angelica said she was leaving but would come back soon. After she left, Raitia apologized to Galt for the way her daughter had treated him. Galt comforted her, saying it was okay, and that he might have reacted the same way if he had been suddenly thrust into the role of father. He told himself that maybe he was being too hard on himself in trying to connect with his daughter. Raitia then suggests that they prepare a table full of delicious food for Angelica tonight to celebrate the end of the war between humans and ghosts. Galt agreed and offered to help. "I think Raitia is really a great mother, and I need to do better. Not just to feel entitled, but also to be a real husband to Raitia and a real father to Angelica." When he goes to see his assistant Toluaria, she asks him if his new family is on the right track, or has fallen apart. Galt asked her not to pry into other people's family matters, claiming that it was just a small conflict. He thought he needed to focus on his work more seriously, so he told her to stop discussing it and get the documents ready. Toluaria mentions that the documents are letters of peace negotiations with the king of Magenia, which are currently being drafted. Toluaria pointed out that during such times, the lack of a foreign minister is very inconvenient. Galt thought for a moment, realizing that the ghost's main goal had always been to kill humans, so no one had ever thought about diplomacy, and they didn't have much of a choice. Toluaria pointed to a few people and said that they were all working hard. Some were starting to get exhausted from working too much. Galt realizes that a foreign minister must be established sooner or later, and they need to send a message to the ghost leaders, asking them to stop attacking humanity. He glanced at his watch, only turning his eyes towards Toluaria. She noticed the sharpness in his eyes and asked if he still had time to look at the clock while work needed to be done. Toluaria then grabbed him by the collar, asking if he really wanted to return to his new home that much. Galt responded, saying that he had promised his wife he would help her cook, then jokingly asked if Toluaria was jealous since she was still single. Toluaria asked Galt what he was doing if he wanted to appear on the front page of the newspaper the next day. Galt imagined that scene and hastily apologized, then asked if he could return on time. She went on to ask if he planned to leave alone while his subordinates were still working overtime, implying that if he left early, all work would have to be left for the next day and they will have to go home immediately. Galt agrees, saying everyone will go home at the same time. Toluaria becomes excited, saying that now she can attend her idol's concert. Galt realized she was planning something. She explained that because of unexpected work, she had to give up buying tickets. But luckily, there was a delivery staff who could buy tickets on the same day. She thanked him. Galt just smiled and said he knew about it. In excitement, Toluaria leaned towards him, saying that she was like a fan of less famous idols and expressed gratitude for her unique passion. He simply told her to finish her work on time. She insisted that she would take care of it, claiming it was her true power. Then she hurried back to her work. At 5:30 p.m., Galt came home, where Raitia welcomed him. He offers to help her prepare dinner. He asked if Angelica was back yet. Raitia replied that Angelica usually returns before 7 o'clock. Galt thought it was great, even though the atmosphere was a bit tense this morning. His plan to capture Angelica's heart through her stomach was proving to be very effective. The strategy to impress her with delicious food is still going as planned. He and Raitia prepared food to serve on the table. But when 7 o'clock passed, Angelica hasn't returned yet. Galt arrives at the inn with a menacing look on his face and asks if Angelica is there. The explorers panicked, wondering if this was a sign of an invasion. Galt glanced at a man nearby. The man replied that he had not seen her. Galt entered the inn, and the adventurers speculated whether he was a demon looking for a heroine to capture and kill. Galt approached the man working there. The man, clearly frightened, said that the heroine had not arrived yet, and that a small girl would pose no threat to someone as strong as Galt, especially if he was looking for someone's life. Angry, Galt grabbed the man's collar, insisting that he was looking for his daughter to bring her back home, even in a situation like this. The man wondered about a demon's daughter. Galt immediately rushed out of the inn, hastily searching for Angelica. Some time ago, he and Raitia were sitting at the table waiting for Angelica. Raitia, with humor, asked if her daughter had run away from home, recalling that she had done so several times as a child. Though she doubted Angelica would do so now, Galt mused that if he could rely on their family relationship, he wouldn't have said anything wrong to either of them. However, if Raitia thought Angelica might have run away from home, he decided to go find her. He asked Raitia if he could tell him where Angelica might have been. Raitia apologizes and says she could be anywhere in the city. He commented that it would be strange for a father to wait for his daughter to come home without looking for her, so he will definitely go out to find her, regardless of whether she recognizes him as her father or not. While running to find her, Galt ponders that emotions cannot be resolved with words alone, and family relationships become much more complicated. At that moment, a woman gasped, calling him a devil. He stopped, asking her if she had seen a heroine in the area. The woman shook her head in denial. Galt immediately apologized for calling her and gave her some cake he had made. She thanked him, commenting that the dishes looked very cute. As he left, the girl told her friend that it seemed like demons could be kind too, and suggested they return to the inn for desserts. Galt suddenly remembered Angelica's friend and decided to summon Celine to her home. When Celine saw him, she bowed and thanked him for coming. Asked why he visited, he asked her if she knew where Angelica was. When the time for her to go home was running out, Celine comments that Galt's clothes are dirty, but he replied that it was because he had been looking for Angelica in the bushes. He added that, as a new father, it was embarrassing not knowing where his daughter went. Celine then invited him into her room, explains that Angelica is hiding there. When they entered the room, Angelica asked Celine why she brought that demon king. Celine replied that Galt asked her where Angelica was, so she simply brought him here. Angelica protests, reminding Celine that she promised not to tell anyone she was here. Celine says that even if she dies, her statement about Angelica not having a home implies that Angelica wants her to suffer. Angelica advises her to at least feel a little remorseful. Celine replied that the Demon King truly cared for her from the bottom of his heart. Galt thanked Celine for her support, and she replied that it was no big deal. As he approached Angelica, she turned away. Galt felt uncertain about how to handle the situation, but he knew he needed to confront her. He knelt down and asked why she didn't return home. If she had informed them in advance, they wouldn't have known that Angelica was at Celine's house. He advised her to turn back, especially since dinner was ready. When Angelica remained silent, Selena gently grabbed her face and asked if she was really looking at Galt. She points out that he is someone who genuinely cares about her. Heroes should not ignore the intentions of their enemies, they should act responsibly. Galt felt that even though the two were friends, Selena seemed to have taken on the role of a protective sister over Angelica. Suddenly, Angelica screams that the Demon King is not her father. Galt thought she was right. He was absolutely sure of that. Angelica continued to explain that their group had gone out to fight the Demon King the day before, and when she woke up, she discovered the Demon King had become her father, which felt like a nightmare. She had been told that no more heroes would be needed, leaving her confused about what to do and whether she could stay in this house. Celine shouted, calling Angelica a fool. In response, Angelica lay down in a small corner, complaining that she was in pain. She then mentions that Selena's cane took advantage of her. Celine comments that one must be brave to be a hero, and in that moment, Angelica feels ashamed. She added that it wasn't just the Demon King, but even Ritia was saddened by her presence. Galt told Angelica that he had prepared some food for her, assuring her that he would not touch her and would wait for her to come home. Angelica responded that while she was able to run away from the Demon King, it also made her mother sad. Galt felt a sadness invade his heart, hoping that she wouldn't run away from him. Angelica scolded Celine, saying that using her precious stick against her was wrong. Celine replied that she didn't mind and even found it interesting. Angelica firmly said that Celine should not feel happy about doing so. She then told Galt that she only came back for her mother because she didn't want to make her worry. Galt said he was worried too, but felt relieved that she was safe. They were about to leave the house, and as they stepped outside, Celine pulled Galt aside and whispered in his ear, telling him to take good care of Angelica, calling him her father. Galt agreed and felt a light shine in his heart upon hearing her words. Using teleportation magic, Galt quickly brought them back to the house. Upon arriving home, Angelica expressed uncertainty about what to say to her mother. Galt suggested that a sincere apology would be a good start, admitting her mistakes and moving forward, the same way organizations handle scandals. She replied, asking him not to compare her to an institutional scandal, because as a hero she has an obligation to return the favor, and she thanked him for his advice. She thanks him and says she feels better now. When he looked at him, the desserts in his hand fell to the ground. When he stepped back, she asked why he was stepping back. He explained that he was not used to such situations. She pointed out that he had dropped something. He explained that they were desserts that Radia had made for her after the meal, and he intended to use them as bait to lure her into appearing. Angelica asked how young he thought she was. She opened a dessert to try, and declared that her mother's food was the best. She then suggested that they should hurry inside because she wanted to eat the food her mother made. When they entered the house, they found Ratia waiting for them. In an emotional moment, Ratia hugged Angelica tightly. Galt reflects on how the relationship between him and his daughter is still unrepaired, but Ratia seems genuinely happy. As they sat down to dinner, Angelica commented to Galt that he had eaten too much, having eaten enough for 3 people. He replied that it was normal for him, but the food on her plate seemed insufficient. She objected, saying it wasn't an excessive amount like his. He said they still had a lot of leftovers and wondered if Angelica was paying attention to her weight, and asked if she was on a diet. She shouted for him to be quiet. He thought to himself that everything was fine. 3 days after the incident, Galt, his family, and Toluarina arrived at the throne room of the Kingdom of Mazginia. Toluarina welcomed the king and announced the presence of the Demon King Galt. The king asked whether the advance notice of the non-aggression pact was true. Indeed, there was no conspiracy or hoax. Everything was as recorded in the documents. In other words, since the Demon King remarried the heroine's mother, he no longer had any hostile intentions towards the human world where his new family lived. The king agreed to this agreement. Someone asked about how the two of them fell in love. With a cheerful demeanor, Ratia recounted that her daughter had just lost a duel with Galt, and that it was Galt who brought her home afterwards. It was during that time that he proposed to her, and it was like love at first sight. His sincerity touched her heart, making her agree to get married. The priest informed the king that he found no signs of any form of control over Ratia. She was completely alert and lucid. Angelica commented that at first she felt like she was living in hell. Being a hero while having a demon king in the house is painful. However, she noticed her mother was happy, so Angelica began preparing for her mother's remarriage. After talking with the Demon King, she could sense that he was a straightforward person, and she believed that he would never do anything to upset her mother. The king thanks Angelica and Ratia for their courage and comments that their war is over. As head of state, he will sign a non-aggression pact. At the same time, he shook hands with the Demon King, declaring that the kingdom would officially enter a state of non-aggression against ghosts. Galt believes that the conflict between humans and ghosts is finally over, and with this peace, he can become a father who takes better care of his family. However, he feels sad because Angelica still hasn't allowed him into her room. She even attached a note saying that if her and the Demon King's clothes were washed together, she would destroy him. This makes Galt very disappointed. He thought that becoming a father would be a challenging journey. In the bathroom, Ratia and Angelica were bathing together. Ratia asked Angelica if she wanted her mother to wash her hair. Angelica replied that it was okay, but Raitia insisted and started washing her hair. She commented that it had been a while since they had bathed together and noted how much Angelica had grown up, not only physically but also emotionally. Raitia felt a surge of happiness upon realizing this. Angelica then asked if her growth was due to what she had said this afternoon. Raitia hugged Angelica and explains that her happiness comes not from Galt, but from Angelica's presence. They continue to enjoy bath time together. Galt then asked Angelica if she wanted to go up the mountain with him. She firmly refused his invitation and asked him not to call him her father. Galt felt disappointed with this answer, but he was not discouraged and continued with his plan. He asked about her reason for refusing, pointing out that the scenery there was beautiful and would be a great training opportunity for adventurers. This can also help her in losing weight. Angelica angrily replied that he seemed to be inviting trouble and insisted that she was not fat. Just then, Raitia joined and asked if they had plans to go up the mountain. She thought that sounded great and offered to join them. Angelica reluctantly agrees to go. Galt felt encouraged by their excitement. He reminded that the mountain they planned to climb was a dangerous place, known for its rugged terrain. He suggested that the family mountain climbing trip would have to wait for another time. Raitia appeared disappointed, but still looked forward to the next opportunity. Angelica wondered about Galt's reason, asserting that she had not said she would go. Actually, that mountain is called Heaven's Blade, and there is a legend about a sword near the top of the mountain, said to have once belonged to an angel. So far, no one has found it. Raitia comments that this mountain seems perfectly suitable for Angelica, as it is related to angels. Galt comments on the heroine, saying that with a name like that, the sword's existence is definitely not a coincidence. It was definitely some kind of destiny. Angelica asked him if that was really true. When Galt agreed, she decided she wanted to check it out for herself. He then reminded her that it was necessary to send some subordinates to that mountain to ensure a good sword was placed there. He said this needs to be done along with preparations for the mountain. Tolu Arena replied that she had a concert that day, so she would have to leave on time. Galt says that won't help when they were on their way up the mountain. He pointed towards Heaven's Blade and commented on the mountain's height, enjoying the fresh air. Angelica screams that it's not as great as he said it was, and it's all pretty crazy. Even though she is an adventurer, she is still just a girl and hopes he will consider her feelings. She goes on to say that this place is demonic beast territory, and wonders what it means to have a sword left by an angel here. Even though it was morning, the area was gloomy and cloudy, with strange calls of birds heard in the distance. She asked if this mountain was really where an angel would leave the sword. Galt replied that angels can make mistakes. This may explain why a legendary sword was left here. He suggests that, since the sword is deeply tied to an angel, the demon beast may not even be able to touch it. Angelica points out that Galt's words are partly true, as rare weapons are more likely to be found in gloomy places than in peaceful places. Galt felt relieved because she believed in him. He then calls himself Dad and encourages Angelica to move forward, promising to follow after her. She immediately asked him to stop calling her that. Galt thought this was his chance to prove to her that he could be a worthy father, and hoped she would gradually feel more comfortable with him. As they continued walking, he commented on the fresh air, saying it could melt away the tensions in his heart. Angelica replied that her heart was clearly still stagnant. Seeing flowers blooming along the road, he mentioned them, but Angelica found them disgusting, and asked if he didn't think they might get lost. Galt wondered if he had been mistaken about his position. Angelica replied that he was slow to realize that, and thought it best that she be taken to a safe place now. At that moment, a dragon flew by, causing Angelica to exclaim that it was a demonic beast. She asked Galt if he couldn't stop it, since he was the Demon King. Galt denied it, explaining that it was just a dragon, a low-level monster, so they would have to deal with it themselves. Standing at the edge of the mountain, they prepared to confront, but when the dragon swooped down to attack, it caused Angelica to lose her balance, and fell into the abyss below. Galt quickly rushed over and grabbed her hand, pulled her up safely, and asked if she was okay. Angelica looked worried but assured him that she was fine. He warns her that if she falls from there, it will be difficult for him to save her. She then mentions that the Demon King saved her. He reminds her that in addition to being the Demon King, he is also her father. She smiled and agreed, said that before she thought he had a cold attitude, but now it seems that the gap between him and his daughter has narrowed a bit. She then said she would rush in and ask for his assistance. He replied that she could leave it to him, determined not to let anyone threaten her daughter. As Angelica prepared to attack the dragon, Galt used her powers to create an explosion that hit the dragon. Angelica was thrown out and cried out that it was cheating. He countered that it was just explosive magic, similar to what he had used when fighting her group, although he realized that he had never actually used the power on them. She chose to ignore him and continued attacking the monsters, telling Galt not to interfere. He felt the distance between them grow larger again. Then they sat down to lunch. While eating, he commented that it was as expected from Richa. She cooks wonderfully. He ate with enthusiasm, causing Angelica to speak up about his appetite. She added that she didn't think this dish deserved such praise, then asked him if anyone had ever made a boxed lunch for him before. He replied that because of his job, they often eat out and his wife is not a cook. Angelica apologized for mentioning something inappropriate. He asked why she apologized. He explained that nothing is permanent and that separation is inevitable. He didn't believe in hiding the past, after all. He was the one who brought it up. He thinks that bonding with the hero and sharing a boxed lunch together is a testament to the magic of fate. He noticed the meat-stuffed bread, which had a really delicious blend of sweet and salty taste. Angelica agreed, saying it was her mother's specialty, and it made a great snack while drinking. He replied that it sounded delicious, but reminded her that she had to refrain from drinking for another 5 years. Angelica tells him that they will consider it in 5 years. He finished eating and stood up, thinking for a moment. I can't imagine what the future will be like. When they noticed more monsters approaching, he commented that it felt less like climbing a mountain and more like groping in a dungeon. He told Angelica that before they had enjoyed beautiful scenes from hell, butterflies and dragonflies digging up graves. Angelica explains that the dragonflies are poisonous, and Galt immediately takes action to fight them. She once again asked him not to call her a girl. He agreed. She rushed to attack the monsters with her sword, saying as she fought that because her name was too long, she could shorten it in battle. He agreed, thinking that he would do everything he could for what lay ahead. As they fought the monsters, he commented that it was difficult. Then they discovered a treasure chest. Galt noticed that this chest moved quite flexibly. Angelica excitedly rushed to open the chest, happy to have found it in such a place. Galt reminded her that they were in the middle of a battle, so they needed to focus on the task at hand. He thought of his subordinates and where they would prepare an old box. Angelica wondered if it contained legends that no one had inherited, and perhaps that was why it was here. Galt told himself that Angelica still believed in such stories. She then pulled out her sword, and Galt told her to be careful. She turned around and swung her sword, easily destroying a monster. She exclaimed that it was amazing. This sword was more beautiful than any sword she had ever used, and she completely believed the story that it was created by an angel. Galt commented that it was a worthy reward for her efforts in climbing this mountain. She shook her head, saying that it was not just her own efforts. It was thanks to their teamwork that they were able to succeed. She thanked him for it and even reached out to shake his hand. Galt was surprised to hear her call them fighting partners. He shook her hand, saying it was natural to help his daughter. However, he still felt a bit awkward. She said they had to go back the way they came up to get home. He commented that it would be difficult and asked her how she felt about this. She dismissed his concerns, saying she wasn't that weak and was ready to go. He thought that, although young, she was very well trained and had an admirable quality. He feels he must strive to be worthy of Angelica's strong spirit. He agrees to continue his journey as a knight as they make their way home. He expressed his appreciation for her perseverance, admitting she was a true hero. She replied that although she had a good weapon, she almost died on the way back and could go no further. He reassures her that, with the help of teleportation magic, they can return in no time. She was surprised and asked if she had forgotten that he could use teleportation magic. She replied that she had fought to the point of almost dying on the way back, but he admitted that he had actually forgotten about that. She shouted that she would destroy him and swung her sword angrily. He warns her not to swing the sword so carelessly because it is very dangerous. She countered that she had tried her best and called him the worst. I think with all this, I feel like I'm taking 1 step forward and 3 steps back with my stepdaughter. Hearing the commotion, Ritia opened the door and greeted them, asking what happened. Finally, Galt meets Toluarina, who reminds her that she is sure his climbing trip with Angelica went quite well. However, she puts that aside and reminds Galt of something they forgot to discuss, pointing out that he is not innocent either. Galt responded that no matter what, he always felt like he wasn't good enough. Toluarina suggests that if Galt has time to feel left out, he should focus on work, especially since their work has increased due to the recent non-aggression pact. He replied that it cannot be avoided because love is something that often arises unexpectedly. She points out that he should at least plan a visit to his family or maybe a wedding. He pondered the possibility of visiting family and the idea of a wedding. Toluarina then asked if he had forgotten all this until now. The next day he talked to Ritia. Ritia asked Galt if he wanted to visit her family. She said her parents had moved to the hills of a port town, where they were enjoying a happy retirement together. Galt suggests that they visit them on his next day off and asked Ritia to take Angelica with her. Ritia explains that her parents' dream is to live in a place where they can see the ocean. When she first got married, they gave her their house in the countryside and then moved closer to the coast. Galt expressed his admiration, thinking it was a wonderful dream. Angelica teased him, saying that he seemed shy like someone going to a marriage meeting. He pondered that everyone would feel stressed in such a situation and wondered what he would say if he had to entrust his daughter and grandchildren to someone like the Demon King. Galt thinks about the next step and realizes that no matter what, they must recognize him as Ritia's remarried partner. Otherwise, she will be sad. Angelica reminds them that her grandfather is stubborn and her grandmother is very strict, wishing them luck when they announce their remarriage. Galt felt a bit worried about this prospect. Finally, they met Ritia's family. Her mother greeted Galt by calling him Demon King and asked if he should be called that. She introduced herself as Sestina and her husband Bondi. Galt introduced himself as the Demon King of Mazunia and offered them some food he thought they would like. He realized that this was the first time he met them, but Bondi didn't seem happy to see him. Ritia reassured Galt, telling him that everything was fine. There was no need to be so rigid. She apologized to Bondi because he might be a bit difficult to approach at first. Galt humbly explained that he was here to ask for their consent to remarry Ritia and emphasized that this was his second marriage. He wondered if he should mention society but hesitated, fearing that mentioning it might complicate things. Sestina then mentions Galt's late wife, who passed away during the war, admitting that it must have been a difficult time for him. Galt realized that they knew about his past. Sestina expressed that she felt a similar connection with Ritia as he had with his previous wife, and did not hesitate to ask if he wanted to marry Ritia or if she was speculating too much. Galt replied that he continued to fulfill his duties as a Demon King and worked hard every day to become closer to his family. He thought to himself that Sestina seemed frighteningly intelligent and knowledgeable, suggesting that he might have been under investigation. Sestina remained calm and sharp, not letting him let his guard down. She commented that everything was very good. Galt expressed his gratitude, saying he would do his best and believed he could bring happiness to Ritia and Angelica. He thought his worries were just unnecessary concerns. Sestina then said that she had an important question to ask him. After taking a sip of tea, he invited her to continue asking questions. When she asked if he had any trouble having a child with Ritia, he suddenly spat out the tea. Sestina asked if he doesn't like the subject of children, to which he replies that it was all sudden and apologizes when the tea gets on Bondi's clothes. Ritia told Sestina that she was truly surprised by both Galt's reaction and her own. Sestina commented that Ritia seemed really carefree and suggested that the two reconsider this since they had decided to remarry. She believes that such action is quite reasonable. Angelica thought someone nearby was choking. Sestina reassures her that if Ritia and Galt don't want children, there's nothing to worry about. However, circumstances are different now, and if they have children, it could put Angelica in a different situation. The way Galt takes care of his biological child versus his stepchild will probably be different. Ritia firmly said that it was okay and that Galt would not change his care. Sestina reminds them that Angelica is her granddaughter, and her happiness is directly tied to these circumstances, which is why she can make so many concessions. Galt thought that compared to the first time they met, he and Angelica were much more accepting of each other. However, that is probably understandable because they have never discussed sensitive issues. When Galt felt an unusual sadness, Bondi suddenly challenged him to a fight. They stood facing each other on the ground, and Galt remembered Baindy's earlier words, implying that he did not recognize their marital status. Galt asks if they can resolve this peacefully if there are any suspicions about him. Galt suggested they discuss it openly. Baindy replied that Galt talked too much. If a man challenged, then it was time to fight. Rachia couldn't help but laugh, finding her father so amusing. Galt noticed a distinct difference in their energies. Rachia reassures Galt that although her father seems ready to explode, he need not worry. She encourages him to see this challenge as a test, emphasizing that he needs to fight to win the princess's hand. Galt took this as a challenge in which Baindy confidently challenged him. However, he wondered what if Baindy turned out to be better than he imagined. Galt vows to give it his all, and Rachia encourages him to do his best. Galt calls Angelica, explaining that this fight is not only for the princess, but also for her, as she will become part of his family. Coldly, Angelica urged him to give it his all. Baindy then rushed to attack Galt, but Galt easily avoided the blow with just a light touch. He made Baindy fall to the ground. Galt quickly realized that Baindy was weaker than he expected, causing him to ask if the match had ended here. Baindy stood up, insisting that he was not done and that he was in perfect condition. Galt thinks Baindy looks like the type of person who never gives up. Without hesitation, Baindy rushed at Galt. Deliver a powerful blow. Galt felt the pain from the attack and commented on the surprising power behind it. He suspected that Baindy was trying to act, trying to appear strong. Baindy warned Galt not to underestimate him, claiming that Galt had hurt his pride. He then challenged Galt to a serious attack. Galt firmly refused, saying he would not stoop to that level. At that moment, Angelica stepped between them, shouting that this was enough. Baindy asked Angelica to stay away, but she replied that she saw he was angry but insisted that he needed to stop. Galt listened, wondering if Baindy was in a state where he couldn't restrain himself from fighting. He thought of Baindy as someone from a war-mad clan, perhaps cursed with a thirst for battle. Angelica comments that it seems like Galt is imagining something strange, but that's not the case. Angelica explains that her grandfather once dreamed of becoming an explorer, but that dream never came true because everyone around opposed it. Galt realized that Baindy had long since given up that aspiration. Angelica went on to say that her grandfather later became a trusted government official, even though that was not his original wish. However, when he saw his niece become a hero, his emotions were aroused again. Galt approached Baindy and spoke up. He expressed his understanding of a grandfather's pride when seeing his granddaughter realize the dreams he once aspired to. Galt admits that acceptance isn't easy, but he explains that it's simply the way the human heart works. He helped Baindy stand up, and when Baindy was on his feet, he commented that the Demon King was behaving more like a human again. Angelica reassured her grandfather, telling him there was no need to worry. She explained that even if she had a younger brother or sister, the Demon King would definitely worry wholeheartedly about treating his children fairly. She also noted that he would be the brother of a hero, and as a hero, it is her responsibility to ensure that her sister grows into an excellent human being. If she wishes, she could even become a Demon King in the future. Galt commented that that was exactly what one would expect from a hero, always thinking about helping her sister become excellent, and called her the hero of heroes. Angelica was surprised by Galt's compliment, saying that he was too polite and could not hide her surprise at his emotional reaction. Galt looked at Angelica and saw that she had grown into a respectable young woman. In response, Angelica laughed and said that she didn't remember him ever raising her. Rachia then asked her parents if they understood, noting how well the family was getting along. Sestina reassures that there is no need to worry, guessing that Rachia just wants everyone to live their lives as they please and promises to do her best to welcome their new child. With a cheerful tone, she grabbed Baindy's hand, declaring that she would deal with him. Baindy then turned to Galt and said that the battle between them was not over yet. As he left, Galt thought that his first meeting with Radia's parents had gone surprisingly well. He turned to Angelica, thanked her for saving him, and offered to buy whatever she wanted. Angelica warns him not to be so complacent as to call himself her father. Galt feels she is still cold and is determined to make her call him father one day. Rita comments that Galt seems very determined, and Angelica agrees. She then asked if his feelings were the same as wanting to have a child. Galt felt embarrassed at that suggestion, while Rita turned to look at Angelica, her face also blushing. Angelica tells Galt not to think too much, reassuring her that she can understand everything. As Galt listened to her complaints, he suddenly remembered someone once saying that it was good to have two children. When he arrived at work, he shared with Toluarina that Angelica woke him up this morning, and he felt like she was starting to open up to him. He recalls the time Angelica came to wake him up, warning him that if he didn't wake up, he would become her experience point. At that moment, Galt decided to get up immediately. Continuing, Galt told Toluarina about how Angelica often mixed mischievous jokes into her serious remarks. Toluarina replied that only his daughter could understand whether those words were a joke or the truth. Hearing Galt talk about his family life, she found it very meaningful because it seemed like Angelica cared about his experiences as much as she cared about slime. Then Toluarina said that was nonsense and suddenly asked Galt to find a marriage partner for her. Galt mentioned that, despite Toluarina's request, he had already planned a marriage meeting, but if he brought her along, she would only make him face unpleasant looks. Toluarina agreed, commenting that living alone is sometimes very peaceful and that she has learned to enjoy life independently. She suddenly realized that these thoughts were similar to the views of many men, then curiously asked if Galt's daughter had a boyfriend. She expressed concern that, among adventurers, there were many people with rude personalities, and she hoped Angelica wouldn't be taken advantage of by someone. Hearing this, Galt decided to consult Ritia about whether Angelica had any romantic interests. Ritia replied that she had not heard anything about this, but also noted that Angelica was at an age where having feelings for someone was completely normal. Galt expressed concern, saying he felt insecure because Angelica was entering that stage, but was inexperienced. He doesn't want his daughter to get involved with strange boys. Ritia raised her eyebrows curiously, asking how Galt could assume that Angelica was inexperienced. Galt explained that when he and Angelica were discussing children, he noticed her face turn red. This made Ritia a bit awkward, and Galt quickly noticed the discomfort. He asked her what was wrong, and Ritia replied that just mentioning secret things like this was enough to make her blush. Since his visit to Ritia's parents, Galt has been seriously thinking about having children with her. This made Ritia really happy. At that moment, Angelica walked in, interrupting the conversation. The little girl playfully blamed her mother for being too whiny to her father in the living room. Ritia, realizing Angelica was wearing adventuring clothes, asked her where she was going. Angelica replied that she was about to go on an adventure with her companions to hunt a powerful monster that had nested in a nearby dungeon. Galt remembered Toluarina's words about how groups of heroes were often selfish, except for the hero himself, who was usually the most serious. He wondered if Angelica was capable of dealing with the diverse personalities in the group. Curious, he asked about the composition of the adventuring party Angelica was joining. Angelica hesitated for a moment, wondering why she had to share this information, but finally gave in. She said that one of the party members was a mage named Celine, whom Galt had met before. The second member is a priest named Naharin, known in his hometown as the Miko of Miracles. Galt reminded himself that Miko were usually women, which made him even more curious. Angelica continued, explaining that Zenke was a fighter and Jonas was a thief, making their group a total of 5 members. Galt asked if those two were boys, and she confirmed. When Angelica asked why he was curious, Galt asked back, teasing him that he was thinking about something. Galt just told her not to bother. Angelica then said she expected to be gone for a few days. Before leaving, Ritia commented that Angelica seemed to be having fun, perhaps because she hadn't had an adventure in a while. Galt wanted to continue discussing marriage with Ritia, but was now concerned about the possibility that his daughter might be being followed by someone dangerous. Determined to find out, Galt donned a mask and goggles to cover his face, preparing for his investigation. Galt told Ritia that he was going out for a while. Ritia felt happy seeing the determination in his eyes. Meanwhile, Angelica walked alone, singing a strange song. Just practice your fighting moves. Galt silently watched her, thinking that the melody she was humming was really quite strange. Finally, Angelica meets Celine. She greeted Selene, and Selene commented that Angelica looked especially cheerful today. Galt realized that the two had met, and because he was using invisibility magic, no one could see him. Selene asked Angelica how things were going with the Demon King. Galt listened attentively as they began talking about him. Angelica replies that everything is fine now, but it's truly a mystery why the two are able to get along without major trouble. She joked that if the Demon King mentioned wanting to turn their house into a castle, she would definitely kick him out immediately. Galt was stunned, thinking to himself that it was lucky he had never said anything like that. Selene commented that that was typical behavior for a Demon King, and that he seemed to possess a certain degree of common sense. Angelica countered that if the Demon King truly lacked common sense, he would not have proposed to a hero's mother. Selene comments that although things may start out awkward, one day Galt will gradually take on the role of father, and then Angelica will open up to him. Angelica asked Selene to give her some space, explaining that the Demon King and her mother had loved each other since they first met, so she didn't mind if things continued without interfering in each other's lives. Galt thought that it wasn't that he couldn't understand that thought, but in fact, he considered her as his daughter, and he was determined to raise her well. Selene and Angelica arrive at the guild and meet the third member of the team, Naharin, the priest who greets them with, "Blessed be God." Angelica encouraged everyone to work hard that day, and Naharin agreed. Meanwhile, Galt observes Naharin and realizes that there are only 2 boys left on the team. Just then, Zenkei arrives, apologizing for making them wait. He seemed a bit strange, saying he had stopped by to pick up snacks, which made him late. Galt felt shocked. He couldn't believe this was a guy. Angelica comforted Zenkei that it was okay and added that they had someone arriving later than him. Zenkei then suggested that everyone eat some snacks first. While waiting, Galt wondered if he should pay attention to Zenkei, who seemed more feminine than Angelica. Finally, the last member of the team, Jonas, arrived, asking if he was late. Galt feels Jonas has a bit of a sassy attitude. Naharin commented that Jonas's apology was shallow. Jonas apologized and promised to work harder. Galt felt doubt rising in his heart. He would have to be extremely wary of Jonas. He feared that Jonas might have intentions with Angelica, because the proportion of women in the team is very high, as is a great hunting ground for Jonas. Angelica was young and inexperienced, the easiest prey. If Jonas dares to hurt Angelica, Galt will tear him to pieces and turn him upside down. Jonas then mentioned that he was feeling goosebumps, but did not explain why. Angelica asked him to stop saying such things. Jonas replied that it was her cruel act. Selene suggested they move on, and Zenkei spoke up, saying the cave sounded terrible and he didn't want to go at all. Angelica tells him not to start complaining before they even begin. Galt thought that this was not good, as it had been a long time since he had thought of something like this from a Demon King. Jonas then asked if they had heard of the suspension bridge effect. He suggests that if he levels up in the forest on a mountain full of suspension bridges, it's only a matter of time before he meets the lovebird. Angelica warns him not to bother, saying that in just a moment someone will push him down. Naharin calls Jonas a disrespectful person. As they talked, the group reached the forest, and Jonas commented that a person standing with the hero should not say such things. Galt thought that Jonas was right. He seems like the type of person who will try to endure jokes instead of being a superficial guy. However, whether he has hidden motives or not is a completely different matter. When they arrive before the cave, Zenkei complains that he feels tired and didn't think they would be outside the castle for that long, so why not rest for a bit? Angelica replied, "Don't say such things before we start exploring the dungeon. The new important part is about to begin." Zenkei immediately put something into Angelica's mouth to eat, then do the same with Selene and Naharin. He even gave Jonas a double portion, said it was to help them recover their energy before exploding with enthusiasm. These treats are macaroons from a famous store, and they quickly realized how delicious they were, thanking him for the wonderful snacks. Zenkei then encouraged everyone to do their best. Galt wondered if Zenkei was really a guy, since he didn't seem mean at all and had a very pleasant personality. The macaroons were so delicious that he decided he would definitely buy some for Ritia when he returned. As he hid behind a tree, Angelica suddenly turned around and looked towards him. Naharin asked if something was wrong. Angelica replied that she sensed someone with inappropriate thoughts nearby. Galt was impressed by Angelica's acumen. They speculated whether it was the appearance of a special monster or not. Jonas replied that she didn't think it came from that direction, so they should be fine. Naharin commented that one cannot trust someone who lacks virtue. Jonas objected that that was too much to say. Just then, they discovered vampire bats overhead. Angelica draws her sword and exclaims that there are too many bats. Celine told her to leave it to her, then used her magic to attack the bats. Zenke rushed to fight the bats from the front, and Giannis commented that they could destroy them all in one go. Galt felt the solidarity. They were truly a good cooperative group. Finally, they destroyed all the bats. Naharin prayed to the gods to grant her great strength, and Angelica thanked her. They succeeded in reaching the 5th floor of the underground dungeon. Angelica comments that the monsters here are stronger than expected, and that means it will take some time to conquer this place. Naharin suggests it's time for them to go back. One of the group said they should leave the cave to set up camp. Suddenly, a lizard monster rushed towards them, aiming for Angelica to attack. She wondered if the lizard wanted to fight her and readied herself to fight. However, Jonas stepped into the middle and declared that the gods needed to cherish their bodies. Then he stabbed the lizard to kill it. But the monster promptly retaliated, biting his shoulder, causing him to feel pain. The group quickly gathered and attacked the lizard until it falls. As Giannis lay down, Naharin asked why he acted so recklessly. She pointed out that if he had dared a little longer, he could have died instantly, especially in front of a girl. Galt thought that Giannis really had thick skin. But Angelica is also an excellent leader. Maybe he was just worrying unnecessarily. After the group exited the cave, they set up camp and built a fire. Everyone advised Giannis to rest until morning, while the rest continued to be vigilant in pairs. At this time, Angelica and Zenke were on guard. Zenke commented that he had never seen Giannis put himself in such a situation before. Angelica responds that on the surface, Giannis may seem shallow, but deep down he is not a threat, so they need not worry. In fact, it was Naharin who introduced him. Zenke was surprised to hear this. Angelica continued to explain that although the Giannis may face many difficulties, they all trust each other, which is why they make an excellent team. Including Zenke. Zenke thanks her and says that he will also try to be braver from now on. He came closer and called her name. Galt believes that Giannis is the person he needs to keep an eye on the most, but Zenke attracts his attention more. Zenke encouraged Angelica to stand up, expressing his feelings for her, and said that she was the first person he liked since birth. Angelica, confused, asked him to calm down. Meanwhile, Galt is lurking nearby, observing their interaction. He thought that if Angelica seemed confused, maybe he should intervene. Zenke says that people will always call him a child, but he wants to change that mindset. Even though he was a martial artist, he still felt like he was being treated like a girl, even though he is actually a boy. He mentioned that he often heard comments that even though Angelica was a girl, she was a hero, and he could sympathize with her feelings. Galt feels they are building a bond based on mutual understanding. Angelica apologizes to Zenke and explains that she has no intention of having a relationship with anyone on the team. When he asked why, she replied that being in a relationship would make her prioritize that person, something a hero should never do. This was the decision she made when choosing the path to become a hero. Galt felt there was no deception in Angelica's eyes. Angelica says that although they may be stronger than the hero groups of the past, they have achieved their current position thanks to their own strength. They even reached the Demon King's castle, which was something to be proud of. Although Zenke can seem weak and is often ridiculed for it, he never gave up, kept fighting, and eventually became a level 1 fighter. Even though Angelica could not reciprocate his feelings, she felt that his confession was something to be proud of. Zenke knelt down, admitting that he understood, and that it was his first time falling in love. He apologized to Angelica and said that such things were normal. She replied that it was okay and that it was the first time someone had confessed to her, which made her feel happy. At this time, Naharin and Selene approached, announcing that it was time to change shifts, causing them to act with smiles on their faces. Zenke says he hopes for them, while Angelica looks towards Giannis and notices he seems to have calmed down a bit. Giannis admitted that it was his fault for making them worry. Galt guessed that they were actually more capable than their parents often thought. Once Angelica's emotional problems were under control, he felt satisfied and decided it was time to stop stalking them. The next morning, Rachia feeds Galt, commenting that he is eating fast and loudly. Angelica sat nearby enjoying her meal. Galt praised the delicious food thanks to Rachia, and she responded with a smile, saying that he really knew how to give compliments. However, Angelica feels unwell and exclaims that it is boring. She added that it would be okay for a normal father to do that, but Galt should stop doing that in front of their daughter. Both Galt and Rachia thought there was nothing wrong with doing so. Rachia asks if that's not natural for husband and wife. Angelica explains that she likes simplicity, and she commented that Galt did a great job acting like a father. However, she finds it difficult to respect him when he keeps flirting in front of her. She remembered that the other day while investigating, she saw him as a hero, which changed the way she saw him as her father. Galt then suggested that Angelica should come watch him work. She wondered what it would be like to see him in his role. He agreed and said that if she saw him as the Demon King, she would probably respect him more. Galt added that just seeing it once was enough. Raitia chimed in, saying it sounded interesting and wondering if she could join in. Galt agreed and said that he would make sure they welcomed Raitia as the Demon King's consort. Angelica asked her mother if she felt okay, and she thought that Galt would show them his true dark side, especially since his subordinates might be shocked. Galt reassures them that he won't burn them down. Angelica agreed and expressed concern about leaving her mother alone to go to the monster continent, so she decided to go with her. Galt replied that it was great to have them, but he suggested that they should schedule an official visit instead of going suddenly, as that might surprise the others. Angelica pointed out that she had already talked to her mother about this, and now there was the matter of the Demon King's behavior to consider. Galt felt for some reason that he thought his daughter was not herself during this conversation on the day of observation. He kept repeating the meditation in his head until Toluarina noticed that he clearly did not seem calm and looked very unnatural. She then asked him when he lost his composure and encouraged him to speak frankly about it. Toluarina also added that she had a pile of papers that needed his approval, saying that he had to sign them all before the end of the day. As he was signing, there was a knock on the door, prompting Toluarina to invite them in. Raitia and Angelica enter, with Raitia commenting that Galt's study looks grand. Angelica added that the office was simpler than she expected, noting that there were no skeletons hanging around. Galt asked, "Why is it strange that there are no bones in the office?" He then welcomed them, saying they could observe his work at any time. Toluarina greeted them, saying it was nice to meet them and introducing herself as Galt's secretary. Raitia thanked Toluarina for taking care of her husband and introduced herself. Angelica reminds that she works like a hero. Toluarina sat them down and offered to bring them tea. Raitia expressed her gratitude, and when he sat down, encouraged Galt to work hard. He smiled and replied that he would do his best. Suddenly, Raitia and Angelica felt a blast of cold air and noticed a few monsters approaching Galt. When Toluarina returned, Raitia asked what they were doing. Toluarina explained that those people were officials from the Department of Consumer Affairs, who were being briefed on a report regarding a new form of fraud. Just then, another group of people walked in, causing Raitia to ask about them. Toluarina replied that it was officials from the Ministry of Construction, who were holding a hearing on the construction of a tower. Angelica comments that it looks like someone is going to get fired. Toluarina reassured her, saying that no one would be punished. Angelica called Galt and noted that he never acted like a true Demon King. He didn't look like a boss or anything, which made her feel strange. She wondered if he had some kind of Demon King-like job, like having internal organs flying everywhere, and the subordinates coming in and out didn't feel the need to bow or kneel to him. Toluarina felt uncomfortable. If this was genuine work, she didn't understand why they weren't more respectful. She comments that everything seems too straightforward, and that's to be expected of a hero. Angelica has read too many fairy tales and perhaps daydreamed too much. Galt, on the other hand, felt something was wrong. Angelica replies that everything is quite simple, and that a Demon King is someone who acts stronger with high self-esteem. That practice is out of date, Toluarina says, and today the bureaucracy is much more powerful. Parliamentary influence has also been affected. Angelica asked if they had a parliament, and Toluarina replied that it was a bicameral system, with a House of Nobles and a House of Representatives. She offered to show Angelica documents on how the system worked, if she was interested. However, Angelica refuses, saying she doesn't care how these things work. Toluarina sarcastically says that heroes rarely care about politics. Immediately, Angelica turned to Galt, suggesting that it seemed like Toluarina had a problem with her. Galt replied that Toluarina had a sharp tongue on everyone. Raitia comments that it is impressive, and that Toluarina seems to be a well-educated woman. Toluarina confirmed that she has pursued higher education. Angelica told her mother that she was being too lenient. Galt felt surprised by Raitia, noticing that she immediately lightened the atmosphere. Angelica then spoke up, saying that she had been wondering something since she first arrived and asked why the castle looked completely different from the last time she and her group visited. Last time there was also a torture chamber and an area full of magma. Tolorina explains that it is the back gate, and the castle was formerly a defensive structure used to fend off attacks from enemies. Before that, Angelica and her group attacked from that side. The other castle was designed for politicians like the Demon King and focused on conducting government business, while the building they were currently in was the main castle. Galt points to a door saying it leads to the fortified castle where, before Angelica's party arrived, the place had been prepared. He is reviewing a pile of documents. Tolorina says that, after all, the castle was just a defensive structure during a siege, and the torture tools were just copies. They did all this for safety. Angelica demands Galt take action. Even though he had a fatherly role at home, she insisted that he at least ruthlessly exterminate the subordinates who bothered her. Galt replied that he somewhat expected that. Ritia comments that since she was a child, Angelica has idolized heroes and villains. She always wished for battles between absolute justice and steadfast evil, with her eyes tightly closed. Angelica spoke up that not a single drop of blood was shed, nor were any of her subordinates burned. Galt thought to himself that he didn't want that kind of work environment. Ritia walked closer to Angelica and gently grabbed her face. Galt felt a desire for Ritia to do the same to him. Ritia then asked Angelica if she had ever met someone without flaws. When Angelica denied it, Ritia added that in this world, no one is perfect, no one is completely evil. Soon, everyone will have to face that truth. As a hero, Angelica's duty is to protect the world as it truly is. Angelica agrees, admitting that she will no longer cling to her illusions. Ritia continues saying that that's not what a hero should do. Even in a world where the Demon King wasn't a bad guy, she still believed that a hero's existence would still have meaning. Instead of following a predetermined path, she finds a hero who finds his own purpose in life much more admirable. Ritia then excused herself, asking if she could tour the other areas. Galt agreed and encouraged her to freely walk around the hallways and gardens. As Ritia and Angelica began to wander, Tolorina turned to Galt and said that she thought they were going to let Galt's wife and daughter observe his work. However, it seemed like they were on a date with the goddess and she completely understood Galt's situation. Galt commented that he felt as though Retia's treatment had completely restored his energy, erasing all the fatigue from work. Tolorina then asked if they have completed another mission. As Ritia and Angelica were walking, Ritia commented that Galt had scored 120 points out of 100 as a husband. Angelica shook her head, remarking that her mother was talking about him again, and even she realized that the Demon King was an understanding person. Ritia asks why Angelica isn't sure that Galt knows how she feels. At the same time, they heard a loud scream signaling that Ritia had been captured. Upon hearing the noise, Galt rushed over to ask if they were okay. Angelica screamed at the hoses, asking them to release her, explaining that they were just catching fire. She points out that fire magic doesn't seem to have any effect on the trees. Ritia commented on the beauty of the surroundings. Angelica responds that this is not the time to enjoy the scenery and urges Galt to take action. Galt reassures them that it's good that they're both safe. However, Angelica countered that they weren't okay and asked what was going on. Galt explains that they were captured by the binding plant, a plant designed to capture intruders, which serves as a rather convenient defense system. Ritia asks why it captured both of them. Galt replied that this tree holds things back when they get too close. Angelica questions whether that makes the plant an unreliable plant. Galt explains that that is why it is only planted in the outermost garden, where intruders are likely to come. Ritia then reminds him that Angelica said hearing about his work was getting boring, and that's why they came to the area. Angelica comments that tax rates and road repair processes have nothing to do with being a hero. Galt replied that it is these things that help society run smoothly. Those workers are the unsung heroes of the world. Angelica shouted for him to stop preaching and let them down, because her feet were freezing from the wind and felt very uncomfortable. Galt couldn't help but think about her feet and the cold she was experiencing. Ritia calmly said that the view from their location was beautiful, and she didn't mind staying there a little longer. Galt tried not to pay attention to her words. But right now, Ritia was in a rather attractive position. He realized that from that angle, it would be easy to see up her skirt. He blamed himself, reminding himself not to act like that, especially when his daughter was here. He then announced that he would go find someone to save them, And when they were safely dropped, Ritia remained adamant that she had enjoyed the view from above, seeming completely unworried. Angelica commented that she was now painfully aware that being a Demon King was a real job, making Galt a suitable role model for a hero's father. Galt thought that somehow he still maintained some of his dignity as a father. A few days later, while he was working with the trees around their house, Angelica explains that these trees are meant to strengthen their home's defense system. As a hero, she understands that in her role as a Demon King, there may be humans trying to attack them, possibly including people from extremist groups who may be involved. Unite with the Demon King against her. Galt said that they should focus on improving their security. He thought this reason was more reasonable than he expected. Angelica replied that she wanted to take measures to protect her mother when she was alone. Galt suggested they plant more of those defensive plants. A month later, 2 boys captured by the binding tree commented that it was indeed effective. A boy commented that it was no surprise that those were trees of the Demon Kingdom. Galt noted that the tree has now become the town's #1 attraction, as people come to experience the feeling of being captured by the tree. A man said it was his first time coming, and a girl also spoke up, saying it was her first time. Richa suggested that if anyone wanted tea, just knock on the door. Angelica comments that her mother is inviting them all as guests. Galt thought that, aside from defense, this was exactly what one could expect from the only person in the world willing to accept a Demon King. They then decided to set up magical barriers around Rhaetia. One day, Rhaetia noticed the nice weather, and when Galt walked out, he commented that Rhaetia seemed full of energy. She agreed and said she really liked this season. At the same time, it also has good meaning for her. He didn't understand and asked her to explain further. She explains that her birthday is next week and asks if everyone's birthday isn't meant to make them feel special. He agreed with her feelings, then she said she would start cleaning. After she left for work, he hurriedly found Angelica, who was having breakfast. Angelica asked why he was shouting so loudly. When he explained the reason, she replied that Rhaetia's birthday was only a week away, and asked why he looked so sad. He denied feeling sad, expressing disbelief that he almost forgot such an important day. He thought it would be terrible to forget his wife's birthday. Then he asked Angelica, what would make Rhaetia happy? Angelica replied that Rhaetia's joy came from the entertainment activities Galt organized, but her response was always the same. She was simply happy to have it. Galt commented that this is not difficult to imagine. Angelica said that her mother's hobbies were a mystery to her. Rhaetia is someone who finds joy in small things. She is not interested in collecting things or getting caught up in any particular hobby. Then Angelica asked him if he had ever given a girl a gift. He asked her again what she meant and remembered that every year he gave a Jaudiite to his ex-wife. Angelica asked why he gave it every year. He replied that it was the first gift he gave her, and it made her very happy. Angelica told him that just because it made his ex-wife happy didn't mean he should give Rhaetia a sapphire gem every year, especially since she had said she no longer wanted to receive it. He denied and felt that it was true what people often say. People who know little often repeat the same actions. He felt like he was just like that, constantly giving her the same gift even though Rhaetia had insisted that she would love any gift he gave. He believes that if he has caused trouble for her, she should speak up so he can rest assured. Angelica points out that he's not good at choosing gifts, and suggested he ask Toluarina for advice. At work, he approached Toluarina and asked what gift would make Rhaetia happy. She replied that anything related to her interests would be a great gift. And even if it looks like a piece of junk, it will still be fine. That's why sometimes she also goes looking for unique gifts. She added that if a Demon King wanted to find something, he wasn't an idol, so he could have simply given her a bonus instead. He wondered if that was appropriate. Hesitantly, he admitted that Rhaetia's birthday was next week, and he didn't know what gift to give her. Toluarina asked if he should think more carefully about the matter. He begged her to take his situation seriously. Toluarina explains that since this is Rhaetia's first birthday after marriage, an event that can make her heart flutter would be ideal. She suggested that just as Toluarina's idol would face her and pose, Galt should also consider doing something similar to attract Rhaetia's attention. Galt replied that using an idol as a comparison was confusing, so he asked her to stop. Toluarina clarifies that, to put it more simply, he should create a romantic atmosphere, and since Rhaetia was a woman, she thought that would make her happy. Galt realized that this was practical advice from Toluarina. She added to make him understand better that she definitely didn't want her idol to have romantic feelings towards her. Posing is a special action that brings happiness, but not in that way. Being a fan of an idol is a completely different story. Galt thought this was somewhat complicated, but he understood. During the meal, he pondered the idea of romance and thought he should seek more advice. He wondered who he should talk to about this. He approached Selena, and after sharing his thoughts, she realized the importance of the situation to him. He asked if he could bother her for advice. Selene asked him about how he expressed himself at home. He reflects on this, saying that he loves Ritia and always tries to care for Angelica. Selene commented that he acted like a normal father, and she also noticed the way Ritia looked at him when he was with Angelica. Galt thought about how he should be, and he said he was finally starting to get a sense of the direction he should go. He thanked Selena for her help, believing that this will benefit her as well. When he talked to Angelica about this, she commented that this would definitely make their mother happy. She reached out and punched him as a sign of agreement and told him to take his mother away properly. He agreed, lightly punching his hand happily. On the birthday, Galt and Ritia finished preparing. She complimented him on how handsome he looked. He refused, insisting that she was the better person, and declared that he would not let any nobles or anyone else look at her. She said that the dress she was wearing was something she had fit into when she was younger, and felt a bit embarrassed having to wear it again. She also expressed disappointment that Angelica could not join them. Galt felt grateful to Angelica for her cooperation. He held her hand and asked if they could go now. They went to a restaurant, and she said it was her first time going to such a place. She was surprised to see her birthday present waiting for her. After sitting down to order, Galt told her that he had already chosen the menu. She just needed to choose the drink she liked. She commented that the wine here is quite expensive. He encouraged her not to worry about the price and to order whatever she wanted. When the food was brought out, she exclaimed that everything looked amazing and tasted so good that her tongue felt overwhelmed. She commented that such high-class dishes seemed like a waste for someone like her from the countryside. Then she asked him if he had had enough or if he wanted to try some of hers. He refused, saying that today was her birthday, and as they were waiting for the main course, he took out a small box, reminding her that she had not finished her main course. He gave the box to her and encouraged her to open it. When she opened the box, inside was a beautiful ring. He said that he just wanted to call her Ritia, no need for formalities. She can call him Galt without the honorific or simply call him Dear Husband. She smiled and called him Dear Husband, which made him feel happy. He vows to continue to be devoted to their family, especially fulfilling his duties as a father to his daughter Angelica. Richa commented that Galt was already a great father, and she could sense that from Angelica. He went on to say that even though he was Angelica's father, but you're also Ritia's husband, and as her husband, he truly loved her. She was touched and thanked him. Galt reflects on his decision to remarry. He realized that he hadn't shown his love for Ritia as much as he should have. He felt it was important to convey his feelings. That day, he gently put the ring on her hand, wishing her a happy birthday. She thanked him, saying it was the best birthday she had ever had. She looked at the ring, commenting that it was so beautiful and that it would certainly look strange on her finger. Galt reminds her not to degrade herself like that because she is the wife of the Demon King and the mother of a hero. Rachel smiled and asked him how long he would continue to call her that. He replied, asking her if she thought he was trying too hard by just calling her Rachel. As they walked, he commented that if they acted too much like a couple, Angelica might notice. When he gets home, he plans to go back to calling her Raya. She agreed and said that he was really charming, even as a demon king. He was still the person she loved. She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek, said she was glad they were home. When she got home, Angelica asked Galt how everything was going. He replied that he didn't miss anything. She smiled and said it was good for him. Raitia looked so happy. Galt thought about how lovely his wife was and felt satisfied that he had done everything he could to make it a wonderful time. Angelica then asked if they had considered having a baby. Galt was confused and told her not to think about such things, asserting that he had no obligation to answer that question. Her face turned red as she responded, saying that his reaction only proved that they did, and that it was actually quite a difficult thing for her to process. As their daughter, she warns him not to come close to her. He sighed, commenting that puberty was complicated. Angelica shouted back, insisting that he couldn't blame puberty and that he couldn't understand. She expressed that she is under a lot of pressure. In anger, she began throwing objects at him, and he asked her not to throw things, reminding her that he was against domestic violence. She yelled at him to shut up, saying that she thought having a demon king as a father would be the worst thing in the world. After all that was over, when Angelica came out of the bathroom, she found Galt engrossed in reading a book. She asked him if he was doing anything outside of his usual duties. He replied that reading is like a form of entertainment for him. Coming closer, she admitted that she didn't understand it at all. When she glanced at the book, she noticed it was a kingdom book and asked if he could read human languages. He explained that he could, but the way it was recorded was different. Curious, she looked closer at the book, and he said that it was true that the kingdom's book, although old, had changed a lot over time. He revealed that he studied abroad at Mezginia University a long time ago. Angelica was surprised to hear about that university and asked why a demon king would study at a human institution, realizing that such an action would certainly cause immediate war if discovered. Galt reassured her that it was a long time ago, and explained that he simply hit his horns while in school. Many high-ranking ghosts also often send their children to human universities to promote healthy competition and improve relations with humans. She commented that it sounded like a huge culture shock. Galt encouraged her, saying that if he could read it, anyone could, because the book did not use sacred characters. He told her to try reading it. She hesitated, thinking the book looked too big. She commented that the expressions in it seemed to indicate magic. However, when she started to pronounce the next character, she suddenly stopped. Galt thought it was as if she had been struck by a petrification spell. Then he pointed to someone and asked Angelica to try reading the passage. She replied that she couldn't understand things on that level, clearly referring to the mention of cabbage. Galt pointed to the illustration of a cabbage right there and asked about the cabbage. Angelica replied that fresh cabbage is very sweet. He explained that the correct answer is that if a storm hits a cabbage farm, the public will need relief aid. Since she was a hero and could use magic, he wondered how she didn't know this. She replied that she just remembered random possibilities and searched for a spirit of determination. Galt realized that she really didn't understand anything. She goes on to say that as long as she has love, courage, and justice on her side, nothing matters. He put his hand on her shoulder and said he would help her restart her studies. The next day, she screamed that she didn't want to, but he reassured her that he would guide her from the beginning, with the goal of at least getting her accepted to Mezginia University. That evening, they sat down to study. She commented that if she had known this would happen, she would have killed him right then and there. When Galt remembered that moment, she emphasized that he should stop thinking about it because it was impossible. He said that to remember things, eating well was important, and first he asked her to write down the names of all the things around her. As she fell asleep, Galt called out that they hadn't even started studying yet. He raised his voice again, asking her how she could sleep and if she had stayed up late the night before. Angelica countered, telling him not to act like he was lecturing her, and asserting that she usually slept about 8 hours a night. However, she added that she did not ask him to use that information to flirt with her mother. Galt replied that he didn't think about such things. At this time, Raitia arrived, asking how their study session went, if they were making any progress. Galt was surprised and admitted that it didn't seem like they could do much. Suddenly, Angelica smelled a smell, and asked if it was the smell of cookies. Raitia replied that they were still hot, and if Angelica writes the name of that cake 10 times, she will win one. Angelica excitedly agreed. And not long after, she was enjoying a cookie, while Galt and Raitia chatted. Raitia comments that Angelica is simple, just needs Galt's sweet coaxing. Galt replied that he entrusted her with that job because she knew her daughter very well. Raitia added that depending on Galt's teaching method, Angelica was able to easily absorb information, and she had become so proficient that she could be considered a hero in swordsmanship. Galt admitted that was true. Raitia went on to say that she knows studying is challenging, but being a teacher has its own difficulties. She proposed that if Angelica improved, she would give Galt a reward and ask him what he thought. Galt felt a bit nervous and told Angelica that from now on they would do their best. Angelica asked in surprise why he was suddenly so serious. A week later, while they were studying, Galt asked Angelica to look at herself. She learned how to read and write. Angelica is delighted, measuring her progress and remarking that now her team will no longer look at her like a fool. Galt clearly understood how uncomfortable it was for her, realizing that Angelica wasn't bad at memorizing, she just hadn't had the right learning environment before. He encouraged her to try to endure the lessons. Just then, Selena and Naharin arrive, and Galt informs Angelica that it's time for real learning. He will ask both of them to teach her. When Selene and Naharin exchange greetings, Angelica was surprised and asked the reason behind this arrangement. Galt explains that without strong academic abilities, Angelica would not be able to develop well as a mage or a Maiko. He assured her that with their skills, teaching her the basics would be a piece of cake. Selene added that it was simple, and Naharin agreed. Angelica couldn't help but think about her group falling into the hands of a demon king. However, Angelica vows not to lose or give up, asserting that she is a hero. Every time she understood the lesson clearly, her mother would reward her with some candy. With that motivation in their hearts, Selene and Naharin began to teach her. Galt informed Angelica that she would have to take the Scholastic Aptitude Test, and if she did well, she could advance even further. When Angelica started taking the test, Naharin commented that she could feel a strong vitality coming from her, something she had never seen before. She advised Angelica to approach the test with a fighting mentality like on a battlefield. Selene added that this is an important step, and she believes Angelica can reach the next milestone. After completing the test, Angelica gave them the paper and asked them to grade it. Naharin commented that Angelica's test results were amazing. Galt praises Angelica for achieving a passing score, while Selene comments that she has improved a lot. At first, Angelica had difficulty with multiplication, but now she can understand advanced math operations. Angelica replies that it's because she's a hero, and no matter what challenges come her way, she's ready to overcome them. In another room, Retia praises Angelica's excellent performance and attributes her success to Galt. Galt humbly replied that he was only doing what any father would do. Then he placed his head on Retia's lap, and when she gently stroked his hair, she said that it was the first time she thought about educating her daughter together with her husband. That feeling filled her with joy and pride, and she felt a wave of happiness that she had suppressed for so long. Galt felt the same way, realizing that the feeling of happiness they were having was something they had never experienced before. However, the next day, a problem arose. Selene expressed her concerns, pointing out that they were facing a problem. Adventurers do not have a certain future. The physical demands of their lifestyle have taken a toll on the body, and as they get older, achieving good results becomes more difficult. This means that an adventurer's career is often quite short-lived, and a wise person would choose a more stable career. Angelica finds Selene's argument very reasonable, pondering the possibility of giving up her life of adventure. Galt spoke up, discussing the importance of learning basic history and economics. He points out that being a hero is just a title and calling it a profession seems a bit vague. He plans to save money for her future retirement fund. Galt reflects that becoming more knowledgeable is not necessarily a good thing, and feels Angelica's future is becoming increasingly uncertain. Meanwhile, at the Demon King's castle, Toluaria informs a woman that the Demon Central Committee meeting will take place as scheduled, and she will pass this information on to the Demon King. The woman asked if the Demon King had returned home, and Toluaria confirmed this. The girl admitted that she was quite surprised when she first heard about the Demon King. She expressed hope that everything would go smoothly with the Demon King, and thought that this might shed light on some unresolved issues and was an event worth looking forward to. She also wondered who would become the Demon King's heir. Galt sat in a meeting with the other demon lords, reflecting on his long time as Demon King, chosen from the lineage of the Luzon family. However, most of his close family members have long since passed away in a succession war, and now those who could be worthy of inheriting the throne are no more. He had almost completely forgotten about his successor. He then requested the start of a meeting of the Ma Central Committee, and when all the members stood up and approached, they congratulated him on his remarriage. He thanked them for their good wishes. One conference member commented that this was a great step forward for the future of the demon race, as the heir to the throne had been decided. Galt was shocked to hear about the successor and seemed confused for an hour. He listened while the members discussed the next candidate for the Demon King, or the next princess. Galt realized with surprise that he had never finished this matter until now. Toluaria asked if there were many candidates. A lady points out that Queen Sasaya has no children, and everyone is sweating in this tense situation. However, in the end, they came up with a great candidate who would become the next princess. She then asked if that candidate was the Demon King's daughter, Angelica. After the meeting, Galt went home and said he had returned. Angelica looked at his face and commented that he looked like an ordinary worker who had just been scolded by his boss. Ritia greeted him and asked if she should bring him dinner. Galt thanked her, and then asked permission to talk to Angelica. Angelica asked him what he wanted. He asked if she was interested in the Demon King, and she looked at him with strange eyes. He asked her to stop looking at him like that, feeling like his heart was about to break. She then asked if he was doubting whether she loved her father, adding that such a question was disgusting. He replied that it was not like that. He was just asking about the concept of the Demon King. She sighs, revealing that she is actually interested in the subject, and says that she is a hero who defeated the Demon King. Galt thought to himself that this was definitely not the right time to discuss why someone would want to become the Demon King. At that moment, Ritia walked in carrying delicious rabbit and deer meat. Galt commented that they looked delicious and that he would eat them all to do his best. Right after that, Angelica interrupted them, telling them not to avoid conversations with husband and wife, but to clearly state the reason he brought this up. He then states that he is currently serving as the Demon King, which is similar to the position of King Masgania. He explains that to avoid a succession war for the throne, the current king will appoint a candidate. He asked what they would call that candidate. Princess Angelica wondered why she felt like she was being tested suddenly. She replied that the term used was crown prince, in the case of the Demon King. He had no relatives or biological family among the monsters, but instead, someone who married into the king's family would have a connection to the throne. Upon hearing this, Galt felt emotional, causing Angelica to ask why he was crying. He replied that he was just thinking about the long days spent studying for nothing. Then he commented that she had actually become very smart. He told about the meeting he attended that day, in which the possibility of her becoming the Demon King was discussed. Angelica gets angry, asking if he was drunk before coming home, because she noticed he was acting strange. He insisted that he was not drunk. She said there was a limit to the foolishness she could endure, emphasizing that she is a hero and essentially the daughter of the Demon King. She wondered why a hero would become the Demon King's successor. Galt acknowledged her point, but explained that all of his relatives and potential candidates were gone. So they discussed whether or not they should consider a hero for the position. Galt added that there is a limit to the amount of flexibility they can apply. Galt replied that he was the last remaining member of his failed family, and that they were only considering their final options. He asked her to think that if she became the Demon King, she would place herself above all demonic beasts, a role a hero should aim for. She replied that she no longer wanted to eat cake and wanted to be left alone. After that, she left for her room. Rachel noticed that even though Angelica said she didn't need the cakes, she had already eaten all of them. Galt reflects on how much he loves Angelica's personality. She lives in her own world and never changes. Ritia consoled him that there was nothing to worry about. If Angelica was a demonic beast, it would only be a matter of when, not if, that she would become the heir to the throne. The real problem, however, is dealing with her pain and suffering. Children Angelica's age often hate it when others decide their future for them, and this is not just for Angelica. Galt thought that if this story was told somewhere, it would be great if there was an easy way to understand and solve it. Therefore, he decided to trust Angelica and carefully explain everything, because there was no other way. Rachel hugs him from behind and says that since it involves magical beasts, she will leave everything to him, as Angelica's father. He reflects that shaping a child's future is indeed the father's responsibility. He replied that he understood and would confront Angelica directly and tell her the truth. Raitia commented that it was the Galt she knew. Then she kissed his horn and wished him luck. Galt felt honored and said he would go talk to Angelica. While she was practicing fencing in the yard, he called her name, says that if she keeps practicing, she can hear him too. Angelica replied that she would do what she liked. Galt explains that when he talked about the position of successor princess, it was only for convenience and did not mean that he would definitely become the Demon King. If he and Raitia had a child, that child would be a potential candidate for princess or duke. Angelica asked him if he was really considering the things that married people do. He clarified that he didn't say that, it was all just a hypothesis. He emphasized that he did not mean that she would have the right to compete for that title, nor would he let anyone related to him take the position of Demon King. Angelica questioned if he was implying that he only wanted to borrow her name for political reasons. You understand that this is a political issue. And as always, she behaved exactly as he had predicted. He still doesn't really trust her properly. Galt directly asked her if she wanted to be his princess successor, expressing his need for her. He warns that if she rejects his offer for some reason, he will consider secretly adopting a child. He also emphasized that the matter of her future mother was something she had to decide for herself, and he promised not to let her be deprived of her rights. He assured that it was a father's promise. Angelica turned to look at him and said she had one condition. She wants to be officially recognized as a hero in the kingdom. Furthermore, she asserted that the kingdom of Maginea must have known that she would be the Demon King's successor princess, as she did not want to endure the stress of being labeled a traitor. Galt agreed to her request, ensuring that he would announce this to the kingdom as soon as possible and would schedule a conference. He emphasized that the important figure in bringing peace to this world is Angelica. Angelica replied that this was probably due to her mother's love. Meanwhile, a monster girl in her room feels frustrated while planning to capture the Demon King. She was angry with herself for not being able to become the Demon King she wanted, but she vowed not to give up. After returning from his meeting with the king, Galt informed Angelica that even if she became a candidate for Demon King, the kingdom would have no problem with it. He explained that the king had said that this would not cause the kingdom to turn its back on her. In fact, this may benefit them. Rachia commented that it was wonderful that Angelica became the next princess, and that it seemed like she was destined for a great life. Angelica asks Rachia to stop acting like she has nothing to do with all this. She says that just because she is a hero doesn't mean she will move into the Demon King's castle. Galt notes that even though he is the Demon King, this will be a problem, and they needed to make sure that King Maginea would recognize her as the next princess in a ceremony that would be held at his castle. Angelica laments that this is so troublesome for her. However, Rachia insisted that she would dress up and attend the event, and that it would be a fun party like a wedding. Galt reassures them that the ceremony will be held soon, asking Rachia to stay calm until then. Rachia replied that she would send invitations to all her friends. Angelica reiterates that she was the one who said she would become the successor princess, and a hero always keeps his promises. Galt thought that maybe Angelica didn't fully understand the situation. But on the day of the announcement, when the ceremony was about to begin, several monsters approached her, greeting her and asking what her aspirations were as the successor princess. Angelica felt a bit strange and said that being able to act as a bridge between humans and demonic beasts would be a great thing. Galt realized she was being interviewed. A man approached and said they wanted to take a photo of her for the magazine. The man asked Angelica to face him and smile brightly. Angelica gave a slightly awkward smile, and Galt thought that her expression didn't entirely convey displeasure. The man instructed her not to move and asked if he could draw a picture of her. He then walked away to bring some new sweets to the guests, calling her Queen. Galt noticed that she seemed to be enjoying the moment. Rachia was happy to hear the man call Angelica Queen. Galt said that since he was the Demon King, she was considered a queen, and reminded her not to forget about him. As the film crew left, Angelica said goodbye to them, and the man reminded her that when the magazine was finished, they would send her a copy. Angelica responded, asking them to draw her cute in the picture. She later told her father that when she was introduced as a hero from the kingdom, everyone treated her like a little girl. However, after being introduced as the next princess, everyone showed respect for her, and that brought a new feeling. He replied that it was because she was now a princess. Angelica added that tomorrow she had another interview scheduled, this time with a reporter from the kingdom of Maginea, and she agreed to participate. He thought Angelica looked completely different from the day before. Angelica mentions that during the ceremony she won't be able to see her horn, and wonders if they should make a cake just for her. Galt noticed that Angelica seemed to be becoming quite proud after everything that had happened. Angelica reminded him that today was the day a reporter from the kingdom arrived, and they asked her to sing a song to debut as a singer. They also said that she has the potential to fill the entire Mazinea Budokan auditorium. Galt felt like things had changed in a strange way. Angelica began talking about herself as someone who could give inspiration and courage to others. She explains that if singing is also a way to encourage people, then it could open a new path in her life. Reitia offers to leave everything to her, declaring that this is the new era of heroes. Galt thought that Reitia's ability to promote growth through praise was truly remarkable. Angelica announced that she planned to go to the capital to audition as a singer. Reitia said that she will always be by her side to cheer Angelica on. While Galt got to work, he wondered about the magic of a demon king who was also a singer. This seemed a bit hasty to him. He notes that even considering, becoming a crown prince or princess remains essentially symbolic and unofficial. He feels that Angelica is too immersed in the festivities, and if he sees her having difficulties, he will remind her that the road ahead will only get more difficult. Toluarina commented that, from the perspective of an ideal fan, she knew her comment was a bit rude, but Angelica didn't quite catch her fancy. Galt replied that he did not ask her if she found his daughter attractive. He points out that Reitia is cheering Angelica on very strongly throughout this process. More than just being Galt's daughter, Toluarina insisted, Galt thinks he should have a serious discussion with his wife about his daughter's future. While at home, he heard Angelica say that she had failed the preliminary round. Reitia comforts her, saying that not everything goes well the first time. Angelica agreed, affirming that she would not give up and was determined to sing in front of a full audience at Budokan. That evening, Galt sat down with Angelica and asked her if she thought people were expecting too much from her. Wanting her to be both a singer and a princess seemed like too much of a burden. He wanted to ensure that Angelica could pursue her dreams, but he also felt the need to be honest about the challenges she might face. Galt believed that if he discouraged Angelica, she might never become the hero he expected her to be. But for him, as long as she is happy, it is completely okay for her to continue trying until she finds fulfillment. Galt realized that his expectations were putting pressure on Angelica, especially since she would become a princess without even trying to be a singer. Galt confided in Reitia, expressing gratitude for her support that helped him realize the truth, and affirmed his determination to support Angelica. Reitia smiled and agreed, saying that she always counted on him. Galt thought he needed to practice better understanding as a father. However, when Angelica auditioned again, she failed again. Her mother hugged her tightly, reminding her that she had worked hard. Angelica declares she will not give up. Galt believes that, even though her homecoming party is approaching and she has not yet succeeded in her audition, challenging herself and experiencing failure are still valuable lessons. He understands that being a father means accompanying his children through both success and failure. Finally, the day of the ceremony arrived. As Angelica prepares, she puts a pair of fake horns on her head and wonders whether she will look good in her new dress. Galt reassured Angelica, saying he didn't mind, as long as she felt confident. Together, they help her look like a normal girl in the demon world. Angelica reminded her that it was Galt who said she should become a princess, so she asked him what he really expected from her. Galt agreed and suggested that if she was interested, go ahead, emphasizing that her situation was unprecedented. At that moment, Reitia walked in and commented that Angelica looked adorable. Toluarina knocked on the door, and Galt invited her in. Toluarina announces that Galt's relatives have arrived. Galt asked Reitia and Angelica to stay there for a bit. As he walked out, anticipating that his relatives would certainly express their displeasure. Toluarina agreed, adding that although they claimed this was a joyous occasion for the princess's settlement, the atmosphere was far from congratulatory. Galt understood this feeling well, and, standing before his relatives, he sincerely thanked them all for coming. Galt expressed his honor in their presence and admitted that his decisions had caused a lot of trouble for everyone. He announced that after careful consideration he had decided to remarry and that there were many potential candidates in the Luzon family. However, he thought it wiser to mix the truth with a bit of verbal tact to allay their concerns. Galt explains that if he chooses any of them, it could lead to disputes, especially since they are all from fallen families. To avoid outside influences on family dynamics, he chose someone with no ties to the family to be his wife. Hope everyone will understand his intention. They agreed that Galt had made the best decision and recognized his correctness. Galt went on to say that the princess was of the same bloodline as his chosen wife, and completely unrelated to the Luzon family, so they should welcome them both warmly. He felt the time to convince relatives was over. Now, the task falls to Angelica to shine on stage, and he watches her with full expectation. Suddenly, a woman ran up to him and hugged him tightly, leaving Galt stunned for a moment. He stepped back slightly and asked the woman what she was doing. Galt felt that Angelica did not quite exude the demeanor he had envisioned. He advised her to calm down as she assessed the situation. In his heart, he wondered how things had happened to lead to this situation. After finishing greeting everyone, Galt planned to return to Ritia and Angelica. However, suddenly a lady approached him and confronted him, demanding to explain why he chose his own daughter to be the princess. She declared that this decision had ruined all her grand plans. Galt was surprised, trying to remember who she was. It was unusual for someone to dare to show arrogance to him in a space originally reserved for a disgraced family. Suddenly he realized that is Lady Daddle Frace. She commented that it took him a long time to recognize her. Galt thought to himself, the Daddle domain was only a small, limited area, and even though they were descendants of the Demon King, they had no real power among the nobles. Lady Daddle Frace continued to accuse him, saying that he was always too confident in himself. She reminded Galt about the Red Moon viewing party about 15 years ago, an event to which she was not invited. Similarly, she was also removed from the guest list during the solar eclipse celebration 21 years ago. Galt secretly thought that these were just small events not worth inviting people with weak relationships with the main family. However, he knew that if he said this thought, she would definitely get angry. He remembered Toluarina mentioning something similar and realized that at every event, Lady Daddle Frace was always hanging around, waiting to be recognized. Lady Frace asserts that choosing a human girl as princess is an act of complete recklessness. Galt responded that this decision had been carefully considered, emphasizing that it had important implications for the future of the demon race. Lady Frace objects, saying that she once planned to marry him and rule with him, but now all those ambitions have come to naught. Galt was surprised, claimed that he had never heard anything like that before. She explained that it was a plan she had kept to herself. Galt feels she is selfish. Lady Frace presents her plan. By marrying him, she will increase her status in high society and attract his attention. She then plans to use her influence to make him fall in love with her. She wondered why he chose to marry the mother of a hero. Galt admitted that he could not stop his feelings. He was truly in love with Ritia. Feeling that the conversation was becoming meaningless, he decided to leave. However, Lady Frace insisted that she would be his wife, willing to give up her nominal nobility in exchange for real power. Galt points out that she is well aware of her status, being a noble in name only. Lady Frace denies it, saying that her family earns 3.5 million demon gold a year, just the lowest aristocracy. Galt was surprised by the number she had just revealed, but she continued to pressure him, asking him to marry her, claiming that just being his girlfriend would be enough for her to gain a little power. Galt realized that she was admitting her motives frankly. He replied that he did not need any motivation, as he was devoted to his current wife. Lady Frace asks Galt to make her his lover and give her land or money. Even though she was quite close to him, he pushed her away. She pointed out that even though she was a girl, she shouldn't be treated harshly. She still felt a little guilty, but also felt that this was what she deserved. She used her power to make Galt stop, asserting that he will have to face the consequences and that this is her special skill, the ability to imprison him for a short time, leaving him unable to move. Galt asked what she planned to do during that time, and she replied that she would not attack him, but would use her feminine charm. She hugs him and says she will harass Galt with her seductive move. Galt asks her to stop and don't do anything stupid. But she refuses, insisting that she will fascinate him and no longer live a life based solely on what they share. She was acting strangely, and Galt thought it wasn't Ratia but herself that was overwhelming. He showed no reaction on his face, causing Lady Frace to notice and comment on his rudeness. Galt once again affirmed that he is loyal to his current wife. Just then, Angelica appeared, asking him to check some of the preparations for the ceremony and reminding him to come back quickly. When she saw him with Lady Frace, she was immediately suspicious and asked him what he was doing. She expressed disappointment that he, whom she had thought was sane and rational, was involved in what appeared to be a mild affair. Galt hastily explained that it was a complete misunderstanding, emphasizing that he had done nothing wrong. He realized that he still couldn't move and continued to say that it was Freiss who was hugging him, emphasizing that it was all her initiative, and he did nothing. Angelica felt embarrassed when she witnessed him placing all the responsibility on the other woman. She clearly said that, while she's not someone who can't forgive a traitor, it's disrespectful to portray her partner as the only bad guy. Galt admitted that it was a reasonable argument, but he believed that in this case Lady Freiss was the one in the wrong. Angelica continued to assert that she had always believed in him, that she thought he was completely committed to her mother. After that, she turned and left, saying that although she felt regretful, she decided to cancel the crowning ceremony for the princess. She couldn't accept this, especially since she was the daughter of a worthy mother and a hero. Galt begged Angelica to wait and listen to what he wanted to say, assuring her that she would truly understand his point of view. At this time, Lady Freiss spoke up, saying that it was true that the Demon King would marry her, and in particular they were getting married because of an unwanted pregnancy. She encouraged him to stop spreading lies as he could not continue making such baseless accusations. Galt countered, asking her if this was her great opportunity. She went on to explain that, under any circumstances, choosing a hero candidate as the Demon King's wife was unreasonable. She thinks he should marry a demon who will love him, have a child with her, and then maybe choose that child to be the crown prince or princess. Wouldn't that be a better result? She continued to explain that even among the heroines it was clear that she could not become the successor to the kingdom. That's why she left. She suggested that he have a child with her, and that child would become the Demon King, giving her the position of mother to the new Demon King. Galt found himself somewhat agreeing with her, realizing that sooner or later problems would arise and the possibility of conflict was very high indeed. She affirms that she will exhaust every possible option, and if she can use her power, she will not give up until she achieves her goal. She advised him not to worry about becoming a princess, and he agreed with her, feeling relieved and able to move again. She was surprised to see this change in him. He realized that Angelica was showing the expression of a haughty girl. He quickly interrupted, declaring that he was not interested in appointing the princess. Family was more important than anything. She was surprised and asked him to wait. He realized that even though he didn't care about the princess crowning ceremony, he still needed to tell his daughter the truth first. He is determined to face her like a father, not as the Demon King. Galt noticed Angelica sitting alone, and he called her. He approached with urgency. He implored her to listen, because he needed to tell the truth about this situation. He explains that the woman who hugged him just now is Freiss, a member of a decadent noble family carried away by her own selfish desires. She was trying to get him to marry her, that's why she treated him like that. Even though she hugged him when he didn't want to, he couldn't deny that he didn't feel any pleasure. After all, it is just men's instinct when faced with such actions. Angelica replied that it would be better if he stayed away from that type of behavior. He reassured her, saying he didn't want her to think he was hiding anything, and he admitted that his actions had misled her. "I'm sorry, I hope that solves the problem." However, Angelica expressed disbelief, insisting that it was still an affair. She then asked him what he was going to do. Says she will at least change the ceremony. Galt felt surprised and asked her what was wrong. She asked if that will create a big scandal for him, which will definitely bother her too. He explains that he cannot force someone to become the next princess if they do not want to accept that role, and that no matter how much she forces her, it cannot change their feelings. She asked him if he was really saying that and felt surprised by that assertion. He wondered why she was surprised by his stance. She replied that she wondered if he was suitable for politics, and she suggested that he should resolutely proceed, even if they refused. She noted that if the crowning ceremony were to be cancelled, it could lead to serious political outrage. He said that even so, she couldn't compare that small problem to the sadness she was feeling. After all, before becoming the Demon King, he was her father. He felt like he was putting too much emphasis on her request, not wanting her to call him father. She asked if he was trying too hard to be a good father. If he was really trying to hide his feelings, it would only make her feel embarrassed. Angelica changed the subject, saying she needed to prepare for upcoming events, and began to leave. He asked her if she would accept his apology. She replied that there was no way someone as clumsy as him could be unfaithful, and she knew what he was trying to say. He replied that he was not a clumsy person because, as the Demon King, he had to fulfill a lot of responsibilities and he would handle everything. She protested that she had never been told she was bad at communicating with people.